Hello passenger, please present your ticket. The special train heading towards the abyss is about to depart. P.S. Simply put, it is an underground adventure story full of vitality, harmony, love, healing, and goodness. Keywords of the novel. Abyss Train No Pop-Ups, Abyss Train TXT Complete Collection Download, Abyss Train Latest Chapter Reading. Chapter 1. Wedge Cold-Blooded Day 2 Tickets for People. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 1 Wedge Cold-Blooded Day 2 Tickets for People. Jiang Xueming is a day person. Gender male, hobby female. At the age of 21, I came to work in HK 4 years ago. Just to raise tuition fees for his sister. So that under the education of illiterate parents, this family can continue to have their children blind. He works as a cashier at a braised restaurant at the Hungham subway station. If you also take this subway, you should be able to see this person at a small shop near the ticket gate. He is over 1.7 meters tall, not considered tall. Occasionally, when facing guests, a slight smile is squeezed out, and even discerning people can see the enthusiasm of the service business. If there are no guests, he looks cold and raw. My eyebrows furrowed, as if I was constantly thinking about how to continue living the day, but today seems to be unbearable. He received 2 fake banknotes. To be precise, they were 2 train tickets with a texture very similar to paper money. Both the thickness of the face and the texture of the paper resemble 1,000 yuan currency. As night approached, the lights at the subway station gradually went out, with only a small amount of safety light spreading towards the exit. He pinched these 2 tickets, feeling anxious and uneasy in his heart. I could smell the salty smell of oil stains on my apron through my nose. In my eyes, I saw a model with heavy makeup like a monster after losing light and color on a billboard. The steps taken out echoed in the empty corridor. He nervously swallowed his saliva, afraid to look at the bills in his hand, hoping that these 2 tickets could turn back into money in the dim light. If you receive fake money, you need to compensate in full according to the order. The store manager said they received fake money. They want to compensate in full according to the order. He just muttered, as if he was in a daze. Who would use 1,000 yuan bill to buy beef offal? I also used 2 bills, how could I be fooled by this? Bai Lu has a skin disease and has taken 3 days off. She needs to see a doctor and continue her studies. She must see a doctor. She needs to be okay. I brought her out of home and I have to take care of her. It is said that adults often collapse in an instant, but they don't even have time to collapse. He still has 2 hours to return to the pigeon cage-like rental house and prepare 3 meals for his sister Jiang Bailu tomorrow morning, afternoon, and evening. Continue taking a shower, brushing your teeth, and you must fall asleep before 11 o'clock, otherwise you may not be able to catch the morning bell the next day. On the way home, he looked at the balance of his mobile banking account again and again, which still contained next month's rent and living expenses. However, starting work tomorrow to check the accounts receivable will be very exhausting. Until the old elevator doorbell emitted a piercing hiss. The rusty door lock, which had been out of repair for a long time, began to scream in agony, and the kitchen and restroom entered. Jiang Xueming saw his younger sister standing next to the wooden frame bed on the upper and lower floors next door, wearing short-sleeved shorts. She was just standing, doing nothing and saying nothing. As if waiting for him to come home. The dishes and dining table that had not been cleaned up in time were squeezed together in the small room. "Brother," Jiang Bailu timidly greeted, "I didn't wash the dishes." "I'm sorry, I feel very tired today." Stop talking, Jiang Xueming quickly took off his apron and began to tidy up the dishes, preparing to cook. The kitchen was very small, and Bai Lu couldn't help much from the side, so she had to keep an eye on it. In my heart, I was only anxious, constantly explaining. "Brother, I didn't mean to be lazy. I was supposed to come and wash the dishes, but today I found spots on my hands." She carried her hands behind her back and didn't dare to extend them out. Ming. Show me. No, I don't want to wait until tomorrow. Bai Lu immediately changed her mouth, her eyes looking flustered. Why don't I take a nap? Maybe it'll get better after a nap. Brother, I'm afraid I'll infect you. Jiang Xueming's voice decreased, and the stone in his heart became heavier. Show me, Bai Lu. Under the pale light. Bai Lu's eyes were lifeless, and her dark circles under her eyes were suddenly exposed. Half of her right face is covered in erythema, spreading to her neck and collarbone. He held his sister's hands and saw clusters of red spots on the flesh mounds of his wrist and thumb, which had grown all the way to his forearms, with many areas already clumped up. He asked, "Does it hurt? Is it itchy?" Bai Lu only shook her head. He continued to ask, "What did the doctor say?" Bai Lu tilted her eyes and pursed her mouth. It took a long time to speak. "Just say it's an allergy." He turned around and continued to tidy up the room. "That's an allergy, don't be afraid." Bai Lu urgently asked, "Brother, will you spend a lot of money?" He took a break from his busy schedule and replied, "It's okay, no problem." Bai Lu remained very nervous and said, "How about we go back?" When asked this question, Bai Lu had 10,000 unwillingness. "Don't daydream, I brought you here just to avoid your parents. I want you to study hard and go back for what? Let them arrange a marriage for you to earn your dowry. Tie you up in a sedan chair and send you to the mountains." Ming finally helped his sister back to bed, rest assured and recuperate. Bai Lu pulled up the curtain and a pair of dark eyeballs looked out. She looked at Ming's busy schedule and calmed down. She heard the ingredients gurgling in the pot. She could smell the taste of the special chicken breast and macaroni cooked in white water. Although they tasted like leaves and mud, they were very fragrant. It was made by her brother himself. She saw her brother meticulously tidy up the chopping board and tidy up his appearance. She was full of careful thinking that if her brother was so good-looking, she should be able to find a wealthy woman and live a good life. She just needed to smile more. After all, her brother didn't like to laugh. She shouted, "Brother, I'll tell you a joke. My classmate told me today." Ming was still tidying up his beard in front of the mirror, glanced at the ticket on the glasses stand, but didn't take it to heart. "You say, I listen. I'll sleep when you fall asleep, don't be afraid." Bai Lu continued, "My classmate said, you are such a strange person." "How strange?" "They don't like me." Ming held her razor and looked up at herself in the mirror. It was a person who had long been worn down by life. No, they like it. When we saw you at the subway entrance, they all said you didn't look like a cow-offal seller, like a celebrity. Bai Lu's tone became playful. There's no cow-offal seller who starts reading books and newspapers when he has time to slack off, nor does he please or laugh at customers. When giving braised food, his actions are like pouring red wine. It's like a firefly in the dark, like a firefly. Jiang Xueming rarely has a smile on his face. The razor in his hand seemed to understand his sister's teasing intentions, and finally became sharp. It needs to be paired with a martini. Olives and lemon slices. Another bite of a pig knife. Bai Lu continued to describe, like a killer, yes ha ha ha. A killer disguised as a cashier. Jiang Xueming just responded. It's not interesting or interesting. I've been working so hard. Are you just going for a moment? Bai Lu muttered and rolled over. It's not interesting, go to sleep. But soon she fell asleep. After the subtle snoring came out, Xueming finally finished cleaning inside and out. He took a bucket of clothes to the laundry room and when he returned, stood under the clothesline in the corridor, looking at the stars. On this day, he finally had some time to collapse. He covered his face, rubbed his forehead, and tried to make his voice as low as possible to avoid disturbing his neighbors. I'm sorry, sister. My brother is a bad man. What the hell should I do if I promise something I can't do? After a long, long time. For a long, long time, people's lives have to continue. Under the starlight, he stared at 2 train tickets. I can barely recognize the words on the bill. Georgia Station, HKSW, Platform 3, 13 carriages, Seat 15B, the other ticket is for a return trip. Georgia Station. This unfamiliar place name completely puzzled him. Is it used to cheat people if they act like money so much? Don't even bother to write about the time of taking the bus. It's really his mother smart. The sentence for making fake money is different from that for making fake money. Now these criminals have to do everything in order to live a good life. He casually tore 2 bills into pieces and threw them away. But this is just the beginning. The moment when the alarm rings when I wake up in the morning. Xueming's thumb had already been pressed on the phone, as if it were in prophecy. Turn over and wake up, put on overalls, quietly and calmly cover up the sound of the lower bunk landing, so as not to disturb my sister's sleep. Everything was completed in a few tens of seconds, as if precise as a clock gear. His mechanical movements came to a sudden halt when he touched the work card. There were 2 more tickets in his shirt pocket, which were clearly torn up by him last night. The familiar touch made his hair stand on end. This time, an extra line of characters was printed on the ticket. Georgia Station, HKSW, Platform 3, 13 carriages, Seat 15B, July 7, 2024 16.11.23.55, the bright red printed font looks so eye-catching, and upon closer inspection, one can still smell the smell of ink. The same goes for the other ticket, but it does not specify the return time. Jiang Xueming stared at these 2 tickets with confusion. He thought 1,000 times and remembered clearly that he was very clear last night. The sound and touch of tearing up tickets are so real, not like a dream. At the same time, Dayman didn't have much time to daydream anymore. He had to go to work. He casually put his ticket back on the table. He had just walked to the elevator door when he immediately met a delivery guy. Is that Mr. Jiang Xueming? You have a courier. Leave it outside the door. I'm in a hurry. It's your ticket. It's written on the email package that it's very valuable and has been insured for over 30,000 yuan. It must be delivered to you personally. Jiang Xueming was stunned for a moment, followed by an inexplicable chill in his heart, as if his whole body was frozen stiff. The delivery guy just put an envelope in Xueming's hand and rushed to deliver it to the next store. I can't afford any work anymore. What's happening right now is too bizarre. The shipping address on the envelope is also Georgia Station, but when the phone number is called, it is an empty number. He opened the envelope and found that the ticket inside was exactly the same as what he had just touched. There is no ticket number, only the departure and destination, as well as the station name and departure and arrival time. This ticket is orange overall, resembling 1,000 yuan denomination currency, but without a badge pattern. Instead, there is an inverted pentagram emblem and barley grain pattern, which do not have any printed proof of receipts. Moving away his thumb, Jiang Xueming could still see a little brown ink stains on his fingers, like dried blood. He only felt that the cult was like an invitation from someone who couldn't see or touch him. But here comes the problem. Where the hell is his mother, the 9 world in his mother? People immediately forget about their work, as if they have found a way to overcome difficulties. But it wasn't going to some ghost 9 realm station, but I immediately called the local police station. He had to rely on the police officers, hoping that they could help him recover the money. That morning, Xueming entered the Hunghong Police Department and explained the matter to the People's Police. And fully informed the police of the specific details of the process. When he showed his ticket to the police officer, something even more incredible happened. Mr. Jiang Xueming, what you're talking about is like a counterfeit train ticket. Is this the one in your hand? The police officer was a bit puzzled and his expression was also very puzzled. At that moment, Xueming looked at the ticket in his hand and didn't quite understand what the police officer was asking. Yes, this ticket. Can't you see it? It's just the ticket and it's written on it. It says that 1,000 yuan will be paid upon receipt of the ticket, the police officer interrupted. As ordered by the board of directors, it was printed on September 1, 2003. Ticket number AK887411, is this the version? I can read it. It's currency, not a train ticket. Currency. Jiang Xueming was stunned. The police officer asked with disdain, "Where are you from? You don't even know the money anymore. Do you recognize it as a train ticket?" Oh, Jiang Xueming didn't react for a moment, thinking to himself, could this strange train ticket be seen as money in the eyes of others? Here, I'll go check the money. The police officer took the bill from Xueming's hand and went to the next apartment. During the waiting period, Xueming felt uneasy inside. Not only the inexplicable experiences of the past 2 days, but also the skin disease on his sister's body made him anxious and restless. After a long time, I heard the sound of disappointment coming from the neighboring department. The police officer has finally returned. Hey! Take care of the money. You're not allowed to report fake police officers if you have nothing to do in the future. Are you under a lot of pressure in your life? Do you want me to call Bai Che to see a psychiatrist for you? Are you fooling ghosts? Do you want to eat a fast food? Is this real money? Xueming immediately stood up, unable to believe everything. Yeah, I thought I could make a contribution. The police officer stared at Jiang Xueming with suspicion. This is real money. The money detector won't deceive people. Did you pick it up? No. It's not that I'm under a lot of pressure. I've been experiencing hallucinations lately, so I'll definitely pay attention next time. Jiang Xueming thanked him and retreated. I thought there was a big case of counterfeit money. The police officer waved his hand and said, "Let's go, let's be safe on the way. I also have the contact information of a psychiatrist here. What about next time? Do you want to be more careful next time? Next time you come to bring cryptocurrency for Yulon Festival." Crazy thread. Jiang Xueming pretended to smile all the way, then hurriedly stepped back to the door and said, "Thank you. Thank you." In just a few seconds, he came back again. Xueming politely asked, "Do you know about the 9 realms, officer?" "I know both Kowloon and the New Territories." "What the hell is in Kowloon? Why don't you go to the map navigation and ask Siri to draw a midpoint and try it out? Also, don't call it a police officer, call it, Sir. Okay, sir." After leaving the police station, he looked thoughtfully at the ticket in his hand. The days of people have to continue. End of this chapter. Chapter 2. Remember to get in the car. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 2. Remember to get in the car. Jiang Xueming immediately ran to the self-service bank and deposited these 2 tickets into his account. In front of the machine, he was both nervous and full of anticipation. If we say that these eerie and inexplicable tickets can be mistaken for real under the inspection of others and even currency verification machines. For Xueming, this is nothing but great good news. He needs money very much. I don't want to be poor anymore. My younger sister Bailu's condition is getting worse and worse. Even if it's borrowing money or taking out high-interest loans, he has to cure her strange illness. Their 2 siblings were born in a desolate and impoverished small mountain village. At the age of 17, Xueming was assigned a job at a battery factory by his family. The reason is nothing else, it's just because of poverty. At the age of 14, Bailu and her parents selected a family in Chongling-Beikou and offered a dowry of 80,000 yuan. They clearly marked the price and sent their daughter away. There is no other reason, just because of poverty. In front of the self-service bank's deposit and withdrawal machine, the narrow and dirty public area was filled with the smell of cigarettes. Xue Ming's hand rested on the yellowed operating table, and he listened to the crisp clicking sound of the machine repeatedly operating to verify the currency. How he wished these 2 treacherous tickets could become his last lifeline. He thought carefully, recalling. For years ago, in that small mountain town. The desperate and helpless gaze cast upon his sister when she was tied up in a sedan chair. Later, he fled with his sister. To escape from home, one must also escape from the network of relatives and friends from all corners of the country. Parents will never be able to find them again and flee to faraway places. They agreed to rely on each other for survival. The phone shook a bit. I sent a deposit message over. It's done. Xue Ming nervously withdrew his bank card, but reality couldn't tolerate people thinking too much on this day. He looked left and right in fear, walking back to the rental site on Longbao Road. However, at a distance of about 500 meters, he was like a child who had done something wrong, avoiding the scorching gaze of his parents and feeling guilty. He brought some essential daily necessities to the convenience store in the alley. I went to the Hong Kong market again to buy groceries and prepared to go home to cook something delicious for my sister. Carrying 2 large bags of things, he opened the small door of the pigeon cage and met Bai Lu's face with red spots. Bai Lui looked timid, as if afraid of light, but also afraid that her ugly appearance would be seen by her neighbors. She tugged at Xue Ming's brother and asked him to enter the house quickly. I saw something in Xue Ming's hand again. Where did these things come from, brother? Didn't you go to work today? You're not selling beef offal anymore. Xue Ming hesitated for a moment. He didn't know if he should tell Bai Lu about the ticket. After all, it had a dangerous smell from inside out. He just managed to squeeze out some smiles, fiddling with miscellaneous items and kitchen utensils while talking to Bai Lu. Today we will receive a bonus. I told the store manager that you are sick. The store manager has a kind heart and wants me to come back to take care of you. You can go back after you recover from your illness. Bai Lu didn't ask much, just sat back at the small table with a clever and slightly uneasy look in her eyes. Seems to have guessed something from it. After a long time, Jiang Xueming delivered the food to the table. Bai Lu had been sniffing that scent for a long time. In the past 2 months, she had been gnawing on her chicken breasts and was about to develop depression. Her eyes lit up when she saw the delicious food. The suppressed emotions in Xueming's heart dissipated before the dinner table. He couldn't help but swallow his saliva when he saw his sister's bright eyes, and pretended to be knowledgeable and rational. There is always a feeling of being unable to laugh or cry. He handed Bai Lu some vegetables and said, "Eat more. Be careful not to choke." He also instructed, "After finishing, I'll take you to the dermatology clinic and go right away." Bai Lu's voice was very low, as if she had thought of something. "Brother, I'm afraid." "What are you afraid of?" Xue Ming casually said, "Are you afraid that you won't finish this meal? Are you afraid of getting an injection?" "Don't worry, I have a solution." Bai Lu tilted her eyes and looked like a rabbit seeing a wolf. "I'm afraid you'll lie to me." Xue Ming was stunned for a moment and said, "I'm lying to you." "What do you mean? Tell me the truth, brother. Where did all this money come from? How did you suddenly come home today? When I was sick before, that store manager bullied us who came from out of town, and you had to pay that iron rooster compensation for leave." Bai Lu's voice grew louder and louder. "What can't you tell me? I'm your own sister, we grew up together, and you can't deceive me. Every time you reluctantly lie, that kind of smile comes out on your face. I can tell at a glance." Xue Ming remained silent for a long time, only focusing on serving dishes to his sister. Bai Lu didn't ask further, she knew her brother was in trouble. Until the siblings finished eating, the room quieted down. Bai Lu pulled out a large cardboard box from the corner and dragged it to Xue Ming. "Brother, after you left today, I received a package that was sent to you." Xue Ming's heart sank as the shipping address on the box was Jiujie Station. The cardboard box has been opened, and inside are neatly stacked piles of tickets, emitting a very pungent smell of ink. Who sent you these money? Bai Lu furrowed her eyebrows and pouted, You're not an ordinary person, are you? Even Express Logistics can't send paper money now. What did you do outside? Tell me the truth. Xue Ming squatted in front of the cardboard box and said, I don't know either. Bai Lu continued to ask, How could you not know? Did you go to sell your kidney? I just clicked and there are over 4 million yuan inside. Xue Ming said, Selling kidneys won't earn you so much money. Bai Lu was puzzled and said, Do you really want to go and sell your kidneys? Xue Ming said, It's not unacceptable either. Bai Lu. So you found the rich woman? Xue Ming said, I can't rule out the possibility of a wealthy woman secretly falling in love with me, but I work at the subway station every day. No wealthy woman often takes the subway, right? Bai Lu. Have you recently taken on a part-time job, such as working as a mercenary in the Middle East or South Africa? Xue Ming. I haven't even touched a real gun. And do you have mercenaries like me who work on time every day? Bai Lu. Did you secretly buy lottery tickets? Xue Ming said, I usually buy openly and never secretly. If I win, I will tell you openly and honestly. There's no need to hide it from you. The sound of two siblings scratching their heads echoed in the small room for a long time. What Jiang Xueming saw was a box of tickets. What Jiang Bailu saw was real paper money. He pulled on Bailu, and that feeling came again, as if there were eyes staring at him everywhere. Anyway, let's go see a doctor first to cure your illness. Bailu was restless and said, Can this money be spent recklessly? Will no one come to collect the debt? In case you get caught. I'm not afraid of being in prison. Jiang Xueming stuffed 2 bundles of train tickets into his clothes. I'm afraid you can't study, you can't afford to eat, and you don't have money to treat your illness. Changsha Bay Health Hospital, Xueming sent his sister to the outpatient clinic. I have been sitting on the bench in the hallway. After paying the medical fee, he waited for his sister's examination results, with more and more doubts in his heart. Why am I the only one who can recognize these tickets? Can you say there's something wrong with my eyes? Does the brain have cognitive impairment? Will banknotes be mistaken for train tickets? Or is there really a noble person silently helping me in the dark? These tickets seem to be urging Jiang Xueming, ask him to rush to a certain place for a ride. The difficulties in life can also be solved by the ticket. As the night deepened, a faint blue moonlight shone in from outside the window. In the quiet corridor, there are occasionally a few caregivers walking around. He could hear snoring from the inpatient department, smell the smell of disinfectant, and several little sisters at the nurse station were discussing something. Over 20 meters apart, he could hear everything clearly. He suddenly woke up, amazed by his hearing. It seems that something slowly woke up in his body. He heard words coming from the nurse station, discussing himself. Which district is the handsome guy from the dermatology department? According to the registration, it belongs to the area of Hungham. Is he sick? It's his sister, like lupus erythematosus. Lupus erythematosus is not that symptom, it's probably difficult to treat. With so much pollution in the sea now, eating and drinking are not clean, and there are many strange diseases. At first, we were just discussing Bailu's condition. Later on, it became strange. Why hasn't he got on the car yet? He must go for a ride. Are you eavesdropping, right? Remember, you must go get a ride. Xue Mingwu stood up, covered in cold sweat. He quickly walked to the nurse station, only to find that only one on-duty nurse was playing with his phone. He looked pale and his eyes seemed to be cannibalistic. Scared the little nurse. The phone fell onto the table, and the nurse asked obediently. Sir, what can I do for you? Xue Ming licked her dry lips and tentatively asked, Did you talk to me just now? No. I've been looking at my phone all along. The little nurse picked up her phone and looked at the strange man in confusion. Do you want my contact information? I think it's too fast. Can you let me think for a moment and introduce myself? Xue Ming immediately turned around and wanted to sit back in his original position, saying, "Excuse me." After just a few steps, he stopped again. Because he heard again, the nurse behind him muttering something unclear. He can hear, he knows. He wants to take a ride, he must go for a ride. Wait for him to turn around and take another look. In front of the workstation of the nurse station, the nurse held up her phone with a normal expression, also looking alert, curious, and hopeful. Is your sister here to see a doctor? I have checked the registration form. Mr. Xueming, you seem to care a lot about your sister. Can my family help me? Jiang Xueming responded, they are all very busy. The nurse had a strange smile on her face and said, do you have any local friends who can help? Jiang Xueming. No. The nurse continued, your number is on the registration form. I have taken it down. I know where you live and I also know that you want to move. Do you want to find a quiet place? I also know of a medicine that has a very good effect and can cure your sister's strange illness. If you need help, you can call this number. The words have not yet finished. Xue Ming's phone started shaking, and a call came. But he can see very clearly, the little nurse never pressed the dial button, even her phone screen was black. Looking down again, it's a confidential number. As he looked up, the little nurse sat back and muttered, just call back, remember to get on the train on time. The little nurse's expression was very strange, and it was difficult for Xueming to describe it. Just like a puppet on a string, with mechanical movements and lifeless eyes, he pushed the nurse's body back into its original position towards the chair where the nurse was standing. Xueming's breathing was rapid, and her heart was beating wildly. He has doubted himself more than once whether something is wrong with his brain. The threatening words made him feel like a prey being choked on his neck. You seem to care a lot about your sister. You don't have any friends, do you? Can your family be helpful? I know where you live and where you want to hide. I have a special medicine here, if you need help, get on the car on time. He was convinced that he was not crazy. These almost threatening words all have clear directionality, and they all point to Jiujie Station. And what is even more unsettling about Xueming from these pieces of information is that her sister's condition may not be as simple. Half an hour later, Bai Lu came out of the treatment room with a diagnosis report. Unfortunately, the pathological description on the diagnosis book still only states skin allergy. Both siblings know that allergies are both simple and complex. The question is, where is the allergen? A few more days later, Xueming and Bai Lu ran around all the nearby hospitals and found nothing. He rented a clean and ventilated large room near Anshan Health Center with his ticket. I sent my younger sister to the hospital for rest, but her condition did not improve. The redness on Bai Lu's body is increasing, and her body is becoming increasingly weak. Her mental state is deteriorating day by day, and her sleep time is getting longer and longer. 1 week later, which is July 4th. There are only 3 days left until the boarding date. In the morning, Xueming continued to take care of Bai Lu in the ward as usual. The doctor is in the adjacent room, preparing medication for allergen skin tests and desensitization needles. As soon as Bai Lu woke up, she was panting heavily, as if she was constantly lacking in oxygen during sleep. Her right face was compressed against her nasal cavity by a deformed erythema. After waking up, she started crying and panting heavily. She asked, brother, am I going to die? Xueming said, I won't do it. Bai Lu asked again, can I get better? Will it be like this for the rest of my life? Xueming said, I won't do it. I've been having nightmares all along, brother. I've seen a lot of people yelling at me. They're so fierce, they want me to get in the car. I'm not afraid of them, I'm not afraid of them. Brother, don't worry. I'm not afraid of them. Bai Lu grabbed Xueming's hand and said, "Brother, I want to go back to school." Jiang Xueming remained silent. He looked down at his sister's hand. The erythema and papules on the back of the hand protrude, and the twisted skin shows strange patterns. The pattern resembles two characters. Get in the car. End of this chapter. Chapter 3. Moon Lane. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 3 Moon Lane July 5th. When the morning mist had not completely dissipated, Jiang Xueming dialed the mysterious confidential number. He doesn't know if the timing of his phone call is correct. Is it too late for my younger sister's condition, as there are only the last 2 days left until the boarding date? But day by day, Jiang Bailu's condition did not improve, and he had to do something. He couldn't bear the crying and hissing of his sister in the ward. These sounds were like rusty knives, repeatedly scratching and cutting through his soul. Nightmares also haunted him. He hadn't closed his eyes for 2 days and had grown a lot of white hair behind his head. If he were to look in the mirror now, he would definitely be scared out of his wits by his walking corpse-like expression. His eye sockets were deeply sunken, and there seemed to be a black breath emanating from his cheeks and eyebrows. A cold and anxious long sound came from the phone, ringing 5 or 6 times in a row, but no one answered. This made Jiang Xueming restless and somewhat hopeful. Until a greeting comes from the speaker. Is that Mr. Jiang Xueming? That sound seems to have been specially processed by electric current, like electronic synthesized sound, unable to distinguish between male, female, old and young. Jiang Xueming immediately replied, "It's me. Are you looking for me, right? Where is the 9 realms? I need to get on the bus." The voice on the phone said calmly, "Don't worry, Mr. Jiang Xueming. We will arrange a pick-up driver for you." When? Also, can the special medicine you promised me be delivered immediately? Who are you? What do you want me to do? Where am I going? I'm very sorry, Mr. Jiang Xueming. I can't answer so many questions at the same time at the moment. How about we talk to a tea house or coffee shop at the transfer station? What do I need to bring? Do I need to prepare something? Do I also need to bring the tickets you mailed me? Thank you for taking the trouble. Just bring your 2 tickets with you. Jiang Xueming wanted to ask a few more questions, but the phone had already hung up. Almost at the same time, he heard the piercing sound of car horns coming from outside the health center door. Here we go. They came to pick me up. Xueming immediately returned to the ward and sat next to Bai Lu. When he saw Bai Lu sleeping soundly, he was still struggling in the suffering of nightmares and illness, trembling at the sound and shivering at the touch. He wanted to gently stroke his sister's forehead, but dared not reach out, as if it was not Bai Lu who had contracted a strange disease, but himself. He explained a few words to the attending doctor and signed a letter of comfort for conservative treatment, preparing for the worst. Then he withdrew 2 tickets and resolutely went downstairs, walking towards the sharp and piercing sound of car horns. The sky in midsummer is not as scorching as it used to be. The hot and humid wind is like a horse driver, swinging his whip to pull the cypress leaves in the courtyard further away. He changed into a khaki long coat and walked out with a floating gait. He hadn't closed his eyes for 40.8 hours, and the piercing horns sounded like poisonous needles. Every time they sounded, his nervous system weakened, and even his heart would ache. Stepping out of the porch, outside the secluded and remote forest, there were pitch-black cars parked on the sheep intestines path. That is a Volga, a very ancient car. Jiang Xueming has only seen it in books, and it was the car that first appeared at the Brussels International Industrial Exhibition in 1958. The 2 round headlights were like the eyes of a wild beast, staring straight at him. The rows of vertical air intake grills lacked the metallic luster, but instead resemble a forest of long teeth. The windshield was treated with anti-peeping measures, and Xueming couldn't see what was inside the car. He walked up and knocked on the window. The back door immediately opens. He bent down but found that there was no one in the back seat. Who opened the back door just now? High technology. He leaned into the car with a short stature and said beautiful words without a smile, trying to conceal his nervousness. Looking forward from the back seat, the driver's figure is symmetrical and tightly wrapped around the driver's seat. Xue Ming could only see the navy blue shoulder sleeves of the suit, as well as the white gloves pressed on the steering wheel. Curious, he still wanted to lean forward and carefully peek at the driver's appearance. A cold female voice calmed him down. "Mr. Jiang Xueming, please take your seat. We will immediately take you to Jojia Station." He had to put aside his curiosity and sit calmly in his seat. Female driver. "Do you want to listen to music?" Xue Ming said, "No need." Female driver. "Do you want to open the window?" Xue Ming said, "No need." "Okay, let's set off now and arrive at Jojia Station, which is about the entire journey." The female driver started the car and paused for a moment. "I don't know how many kilometers it will take. The journey will take 40 minutes. Do you want to book a meal at the station?" Xue Ming said, "No need." The female driver continued, "Boss has reserved an afternoon tea for you at the station." Xue Ming. "Boss. The car is heading towards the highway." Female driver. "Yes, it's the one who just called you. Don't you have many questions to ask?" Jiang Xueming immediately asked, "Can you tell me in detail? It seems like you should know a lot." The female driver waved her finger without turning back and said, "Don't chat with me while driving. I've only been on duty recently." Jiang Xueming had no choice but to give up, quietly and leisurely looking at the scenery outside the window. At least for now, he knows that these mysterious people seem to have no apparent hostility towards him. He secretly observed the face of the female driver through the rearview mirror, only for a moment. The pair of dark and clever eyes in the rearview mirror cast a meaningful look at him. Just the gaze in the mirror lasted for a short moment, and Xueming immediately shifted his gaze away. "I'm sorry," he looked out the window and stopped glancing around. At this moment, he could clearly hear the female driver's wicked smile with overtones. It's like mockery, and it's like a trick was successful. The scenery outside the window gradually became unfamiliar. The sky and the earth also darkened together, and the low pressure in midsummer rushed towards the earth with clouds, as if a thunderstorm would fall at any time, and the sun would also hide. The interior of the car began to heat up. Xueming finally couldn't help but ask a question, "Turn on the air conditioning, right?" The female driver turned on the air conditioning ahead of time, seeming to be an oracle. The environment immediately became much cooler, followed by a long wait. While waiting, Xueming's eyes remained fixed on the outside of the car window. He began to feel uneasy inside. After living in this city for 4 years, the street view outside the window and the buildings passing by were so unfamiliar to him. After settling down in Hungham, this may be the farthest he has traveled. This feeling of unease is slightly different from simply traveling. He saw, far and far away, in the sky even further behind the commercial building. The dark clouds covered most of the sky, slowly eroding from the front like waves. In the vast cloud layers, there were swirls of black, gray, and white mixed together, with contours and shadows shining against each other, and a final glow of the sun. From time to time, a pale blue thunder flashed through the clouds, with a deep muffled sound, like the low roar of a wild beast. It seems as if there is an unknown giant creature hidden within it, whose body still retains the light of thunder and stars. This sense of unfamiliarity and estrangement created an inexplicable tranquility in Xueming's heart, making him dizzy and mesmerized. He originally wanted to remember the buildings on this highway, even some road signs. It would give him a sense of security on this day. At least when reporting to the police, he could accurately pinpoint the location of Jojia Station, but he couldn't. Every few kilometers, road signs flash by. On this colorful and dark road, he could hardly see any words outside the window. The smell of grass leaves emanating from the car air conditioning made him drowsy. He started rubbing his eyes, yawning, trying to move his legs to tighten the muscles in his calves, accelerating the pumping of blood into the heart, flowing to the brain, and then staying awake. "Mr. Jiang Xueming. What are you doing in the back seat?" The female driver noticed a strange movement. Just this question, it's like a spell. His brain was instantly overloaded while thinking about how to answer, like a phone with zero battery, completely shut down. When he wakes up, Volga is parked next to an ancient alley, where the red bricks of the archways on both sides of the alley are aging, with ivy and moss growing. On both sides are 3 or 4 low-rise buildings. Pedestrians are sparse on the road, and there are few food shops. It's completely dark now. Only bright stars and dim street lights accompany this car. The signboard next to the sidewalk bears its name. Moon Lane. End of this chapter. Chapter 4, Do You Seem to Know? You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 4, Do You Seem to Know? Jiang Xueming crawled out of the car and immediately trembled with the cold and damp air. The scenery in the deep alley is very strange. In addition to the dirty and old walls, there is also a thick mist of white smoke like silk and brocade. He knocked on the car window and then returned to the car to take a look. The mysterious female driver was nowhere to be seen. Looking at the signboard at the entrance of Moon Alley, there is a line of small characters written. It is the guide to the VIP reception hall at Jiujie Station. So, just walk forward. He calmed down, took out his phone, took photos of the scenery around him, edited text messages and WeChat messages, and sent these pictures to his sister's phone, reporting his safety. Then he opened the navigation map and wanted to know the specific location of this place. What surprised him was that the position of Moon Lane on the map navigation was very abnormal. The location display shows that Xueming is currently located next to a Japanese restaurant on the West Main Road in Kowloon. But in reality, he checked the shop signs on the map one by one, but none of them matched. The grocery, fashion, and food shops on both sides of the alley look like they were decorated more than a decade ago, with old storefronts and mostly without signs. Occasionally, storefronts with light signs have very ordinary names. Facades like Everyday Convenience Store or Kuning Fashion are everywhere. This scene made him feel as if he had returned to his childhood, to the mountain market in his hometown. He still didn't give up, repeatedly clicking on the GPS navigation reset button. After trying more than 10 times, he was shocked and saw the column about altitude numbers in the parameters on the map. Current location. Number 15 Donghui Building, Kowloon West Corridor, altitude 17521.11 meters, I'm here. I'm underground. He looked up at the stars and said, I'm 17 kilometers underground. The deep stars in the sky are like 10,000 eyes. The mobile clock shows that it is now July 5 at 9:40 a.m. He remembered clearly that the departure time was 8.55, and the time spent on this journey was basically consistent with the travel time mentioned by the female driver. He took a deep breath and coughed from the damp and cold air. Immediately after, he embraced each other with his arms, bent down, and plunged into the deep alley, heading towards the direction of the VIP reception hall. This alley has no forks and occasionally takes a few small turns. I don't know how long he walked, but his eyes gradually adapted to the dark environment, and the buildings on both sides also grew taller. It's like he's moving towards a deep mountain crevice underground. He opened the pedometer on his phone, walked about 3 kilometers, and then turned right at a right angle. His eyes suddenly became clear. What catches the eye is the huge fountain square. In his view, there should be a flat road of over 10 kilometers from the far left to the far right of the square, and behind it lies a deep and dense fog. Every 2 to 3 kilometers, there will be a towering bronze sculpture hidden in the mist, faintly visible. The statues are grand and eerie, depicting images like giant figures kneeling on the ground. He saw the large copper sculpture closest to him, The muscle texture, acne scars, and even capillaries on the skin of this huge copper and iron statue are so real, as if they will come back to life at any time. They half knelt in front of the vast and far-reaching reception hall corridor tower. The muscles of the two arms were twisted and bulging, and they lifted their arms towards the starry sky. They are over 40 stories tall, as if supporting the entire starry sky with a dome. On their bodies, they are draped in short knee-length chest-length cloth robes, which are layered with sturdy ropes, and the outer layer of the ropes is also adorned with cast-iron-colored metal double loop locks. These bronze-carved faces seem to have been eaten away by some kind of parasite. Starting from the position of the chin, the mottled and messy wounds were marked with bite marks, and the bite marks of the large and small rings gnawed on these huge copper heads, making them unrecognizable. He looked at these magnificent and eerie giant statues, and for a moment forgot to step forward and froze in place. Suddenly, the flash and shutter sound of the camera summoned him back to the human world. He glanced alertly towards the left and right sides. I realized there was more than one alley behind me. Many travelers with similar circumstances have already walked out of other alleys. The flash and shutter sound just now came from another passenger 100 meters behind. Xue Ming could see clearly that the person also seemed to have 2 tickets in his hand. He carefully discerned the buildings behind him. It was almost difficult to describe these eerie stone corridors and dangerous roads in words. In a huge and complex composite building, there are countless stairs and exits. They are densely packed in a facing cliff pass. Everywhere is repaired, like cliffs and strange rocks chiseled with knives and axes. Everywhere are artificial structures used to guide passengers through stairs and paths. The complex structure made him feel the designer's almost crazy geometric architectural aesthetics. Above the exit of his alley, there are nearly 1,000 other exits coupled with different roads and stairs. On those roads, many passengers can still be seen carefully following the corridors and stairs all the way down. Walking towards the reception hall with the searchlight on my phone. Xue Ming seemed to be the luckiest person, walking at the forefront of all his fellow travelers. He shouted loudly behind him, trying to catch the attention of others. But he shouted through his throat, and no one answered him. The shout spread far and wide, and echoes could be heard. In the open square, only the fountain next to the huge copper sculpture emits the sound of water dripping. Human beings are social animals. Almost instinctively driven, Xue Ming decided to walk towards one of his seemingly reliable companions. He could see clearly the appearance of the traveler, who was a middle-aged man, with a distance of only over 100 meters, about the distance of a sports track. But what frustrated him was that no matter how he walked, the pedometer number on his phone followed suit, and that companion remained so far away, as if he had never moved his position. Step by step, walking on the dark slate road, he gradually began to let out heavy gasps. The body gradually becomes heavy in a low-temperature and low-energy environment, and the legs seem to have been filled with lead. When he stopped to rest, his arms rested on his knees, panting and coughing heavily. When I looked up, I suddenly realized that the target I had chosen was my partner, the middle-aged man, who was less than 100 meters away from him, seemed to be walking towards this end. Xue Ming vigorously waved his hands and relaxed his limbs. He didn't understand sign language or flag language. He just hopes that the other party can see these actions, establish a connection between the two, and try to communicate. Under the cover of thin mist, figures in the distance are also waving their hands. It seems to have responded to Xue Ming's physical movements. It seems that I can't walk to his side, he finally recognized reality. This strange square doesn't seem to want us people to come together. On this road, Xue Ming walked for over 2 hours and ran a dead horse on the mountain. There is not much time left for him, nor much time left for his sister. He turned his head and looked towards the direction of the VIP reception hall. There is a huge moon hanging in the sky, which is like a canvas drawn with fluorescent paint in the sky. Under the moonlight, not far behind the huge copper sculpture, rows of low and low foreign halls cluster around 3 square halls that are as huge as the copper sculpture, like stars supporting the moon. On the central hall gate tower, there is a iron sign of Georgia Station hanging. On both sides of its main road are the male and female guest areas of the reception hall. A long whistle sounded from a further direction. Next came the deep roar of the rails and wheels rolling and tilting. A thick crimson smoke slowly rose in the thin mist. It's like the thick steam spewing out from the locomotive. He walked towards that direction. This time, all the signs and references in the field of vision are approaching him. The giant statue and fountain are getting closer. The buildings are also getting closer. As he walked up to the giant bronze sculpture, he looked up at it, his neck starting to ache. It was only then that he realized how outrageous the engineering elements required to create these buildings were. Continuing forward, according to the record of his mobile pedometer, he walked about 5 kilometers and finally reached the entrance of the men's area. There was silence all around, and the companions behind were still on their way. Moving forward, there are over 50 red carpet paved porch roads. There seems to be a large gate in the middle of these small doors, which is about 8 lanes wide, used for transporting goods and traffic. About 50 meters away, he can walk to the entrance of the porch. He could see the registration desks in front of these porches, with a waiter standing next to each desk. Yes, it's the waiter. Using the vocabulary he understands to describe it may differ from the impression of a typical waiter or waitress. Those people were dressed neatly, their scissor-tail dresses and vests were spotless, with a white inside black and a red tie on the outside. The creases and stitching of their pants and the strap style of their leather shoes were completely consistent, except for a slight difference in appearance. They all have a proud and imposing appearance, with their heads and chest high. That expression was like a replica carved from a mold. They are holding silver plates and holding hot towels on their forearms. There are meal packets, orange juice, and pre-dinner wine on the plate. There are water basins and makeup mirrors on the registration desk. They have both men and women, most of whom appear to be over 20 and under 30 years old, with astonishingly consistent facial expressions. Full of eerie vitality, as if ready at any time, waiting for the distinguished guests to come. When Xueming walked to the front porch, immediately, a voice stopped him. Mr. Jiang Xueming. The familiar voice lifted his spirits, it was a woman's voice. He tried hard to recall, but still couldn't remember. Mr. Jiang Xueming, look over here, your entrance is over here. He looked in response, and one of the waiters had walked calmly to him. He still remembers where he heard this voice before, the unfamiliar waitress stood in front of him. Mr. Jiang Xueming, please come with me. Your passage is on the left side. The waitress held the plate in her right hand and gently brushed away the dust on her shoulder with her left hand. It seems like a greeting has been given. Xueming's spirit lifted and he said, I remember you. We've seen each other before. Waitress. Yes. The one you saw in the rearview mirror. Xueming nodded and said, yes, you are that driver. The waitress is no exception, giving people a very familiar feeling. She is about 1.7 meters tall, and with the support of thick-soled leather shoes, she is about as tall as Xueming. A head of black hair tied with a red ribbon in a high ponytail, with side bangs giving a feeling of heroic and vigorous hair, making her a handsome sister. Jiang Xueming still remembers her eyes. That is an eye that he can't forget even after seeing it. Just like in the vast crowd on the street, our eyes cannot be ignored, exuding a sharp and alert connotation, very capable. You've worked hard all the way, Mr. Xueming. The waitress took him to the registration desk and sent him the registration manual and pen. Xueming took these things and started writing personal information. During this period, he found this handsome sister quite interesting. He heard the waitress first introduce herself. I am your guide, responsible for bringing you here and taking care of your daily life, food, drink, and activities at the station during the trip. Xueming didn't even lift her head and said, how do you call it? The waitress immediately replied, number 9527. Upon hearing this title, Xue Ming's eyebrows jumped and she lifted her head. She happened to see the sister hunched over, her hands propped up on the registration desk, staring straight at herself. The tips of their noses are almost touching each other. Jiang Xueming didn't understand and asked, "Is this? Did you happen to catch a chance? Did you get such a job number?" The handsome sister replied straightforwardly, "No, I chose it myself." "But that's right." She vigorously shook the handle, literally, nothing else, under the registration desk, and the originally low countertop rose up. Xue Ming can also stand up straight and write her name well. Sister Shui continued, however. Although my name is 9527, I am not your first-class servant. We have a fair and equal relationship between employers and laborers. What should I call you? Xue Ming filled out the basic information and returned the registration manual to the handsome sister. Xiaoqi, Aki, 9527 are all good, isn't it just a number? There's no such thing as attention to detail. Handsome sister didn't show any concern and pulled Xueming's arm into the door. Let's call you Xiaoqi, then. Xueming just breathed a sigh of relief, but then saw the other attendants at the entrance, all looking at this end coincidentally. The gaze of those waiters was filled with malice and ferocity, as if they had been snatched away by other hunters. This made Xue Ming's heart jump up to her throat again as soon as it returned to her stomach. What's the situation? Why are they all looking at me? Hey, don't worry. Xiao Qi turned around and explained, this is the boss's mistake. Did the boss make a mistake? Xue Ming didn't quite understand. He stood in the porch, ready to listen to Xiao Qi's explanation. Just our boss. Xiao Qi has a lot of body language and rich facial expressions. She would frown and wink at Xueming for a moment, and then make meaningless gestures and shrug her shoulders. You know, when you receive the ticket, let's go to your house first and pick you up, she said. Xueming nodded and said, yes, it's this process. Xiao Qi continued, and then, driving it for 40 minutes is a simple matter. Getting off at the entrance of the reception hall on Welcome Avenue is such a beautiful thing, isn't it? Xue Ming continued to nod and said, that's right. Xiao Qi frowned and looked at him with disdain. What the boss meant was to leave the guests in Moon Lane and let you walk for over an hour on two legs, facing the wall. First, we had a half-hour stair training session, followed by a half-hour walk and morning exercise. The fitness process was clearly arranged, and all of this was the boss's bad idea. Ah. Xue Ming didn't quite understand. Why did you do this? Sense of ritual. Xiao Qi put his arm around brother Xueming's shoulder and came up to him and teased him. Do you understand the sense of ritual? I don't understand it anyway, and those brothers and sisters outside also don't understand it. The distance is getting closer. Xue Ming's heart beats faster as she approaches. Xiao Qi continued to complain, what about us? We'll go back early to change clothes, prepare to pick up guests, and then wait outside the door for over an hour. That's over an hour. I first got angry on the busiest and worst streets of HK, and even smiled. Smile and serve you. You slept so soundly that you didn't hear me gritting my teeth. Just for the sense of ceremony in the boss's mouth. I have a ghostly feeling. Even the Cantonese tone has come out. What kind of genius pig chop bun idea did Boss Jiao Mao come up with? These details will be criticized in niche reviews. If I were a customer, I would give the station the top slogan of Han family wealth every minute. Xiao Qi flicked his hair, managed his demeanor and expression well, and muttered in disgust, what more sense of luxury is there? Stand at the door with a supermodel face and wait for the guests. When the guests walk to the door with half of their lives gone, hand them orange juice and pre-dinner wine with elegance. Xue Ming blinked twice. Xiaoqi finally realized his composure and said, oh, I'm sorry for being so rude. Hee hee. Xue Ming continued to ask, so those older brothers and sisters outside the door just now. Aren't they jealous? The way they look at us is so jealous that they almost go crazy. Xiao Qi finally explained clearly and hugged the distinguished guest closer, as if he had found a treasure. You're lucky, you're the first guest to arrive at the door today. Thanks to your nimble legs, I don't have to stand here foolishly anymore. They still have time to wait. Xue Ming suddenly realized the malicious gaze in her emotions just now. Is that what's going on? The atmosphere has become normal, it's not that normal again. Anyway, after experiencing such a surprise or shock, Xue Ming's heart didn't easily jump out of her throat. It's just that in this unfamiliar environment, I feel a bit uncomfortable being hugged by Xiaoqi, who has been hunching over since we first met. Xiaoqi was puzzled and said, "Jie, look at me." He was just about to ask a polite greeting. Can you let go of me? Xiaoqi. Hey, are you shy? I have great respect for women, Xue Mingyi said with a serious tone, as she was carried by Xiaoqi and walked deeper into the porch. Qi Gu, I respect your straightforward and agile personality. We do seem to have eye contact, but there's no need for us to just be so intimate, right? I still have business to do, I'm busy, really not free, my sister is still. Before he finished speaking, he only felt a chill on his cheeks. It seems that something pecked at his face. All right. You're not shy now, are you? Go wash your face, I'll take you to see the boss later, talk about your sister, and your ticket. Xiao Qi whistled and pushed up the registration desk, bringing his makeup mirror and water basin to Xue Ming. Xue Ming looked at herself in the makeup mirror, with lipstick marks on her side face. The brain is thinking, as if it hasn't realized what happened just now. He seems to have been eaten by a female hooligan, feeling a bit angry but still smiling. He wants to wash away the dust all the way, clean the dirt on his ears and nose, and the oil stains on the corners of his eyes. Wipe off the dust on your face and the creamy bean paste lipstick marks on your cheeks. He casually asked, Brother Qi, were you always so passionate before? Did you always treat your customers like this? You're not afraid of negative reviews, are you? Of course not. Do I look like a very casual person? Xiao Qi's smile was very antagonistic. To describe it, it's like the eerie ancient tomb coffins in movies and TV dramas emitting laughter of burning jade and stone. He wiped away the moisture from his face and also wiped away the twitching corners of his mouth, doing a good job of facial expression management. Do you think I'm being bullied? Xiao Qi tilted his eyes and pursed his lips, without answering. He continued to lead the way into the porch, bouncing and jumping. Xue Ming felt like she had been hit hard, wanting to say something, but couldn't say it. She was worried about her ticket and sister, so she obediently followed behind Xiao Qi. He just heard a whisper from Xiao Qi. That voice was particularly low, and it seemed like it was deliberately spoken. You seem to know you look pretty. End of this chapter. Chapter 5. Vita brand. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 5 Vita brand. The passage through the porch. Walking more than 100 meters towards the entrance, Jiang Xueming passed through the red doors of 8 large banquet halls and arrived at the first courtyard of the welcome hall. He saw patches of red pine forests in the courtyard, surrounded by 16 large terraces. Behind the terraces were living areas. Restaurants, bathhouses, entertainment rooms, and gyms. Enter the largest internal building of the welcome hall through the main road of the first courtyard. On the walls of the archway corridor, he also saw a signpost with the name of this place written on it. Called the 5 Kings Council. After walking more than 100 meters into the wide arched tunnel corridor, you arrived at the central office. On both sides are magnificent relief walls and colorful hanging paintings. 5 gilt-edged oil paintings were hung high in the hall, facing all the guests directly. The office hall was bustling with people, but it was unusually quiet. Waiters and their passengers were seen shuttling back and forth at various counters, knocking their seals. In Xueming's opinion, these passengers do not have particularly obvious characteristics, including those of all ages and genders who are healthy and disabled. The age distribution is also very random. He had intended to park for a few minutes, but noticed something unusual when he was pulled by Xiao Qi's arm and dragged into the elevator. "Don't I have to go through those procedures?" He stood in front of the elevator door, staring at the brass pipes and the pure black iron door, looking at the patterns on the door. Xiao Qi casually replied, "No need, you're in a hurry. You can slowly make up for it later." Oh, he suddenly became nervous. "Is it because of Bailu's condition?" Xiao Qi nodded and said, "That's right, your sister's illness is very special." Xueming asked, "Do you understand?" "Seventh brother, can you explain to me?" Before the words fell, the elevator door opened. "Step out of the hurried passengers." Most of them were wearing warm long clothes, with a strange smell of rust on their bodies, and their expressions were melancholic, as if they had just received bad news. Approaching, one of the passengers walked past Xueming. At that moment, Jiang Xueming clearly captured the clue. He could see very clearly, the tall traveler who had just passed by him in the wrong direction, looking through the gap between his high-necked coat and hood. The neck and nostrils hidden in the shadows are tinged with a hint of crimson. That color, Xueming will never forget for a lifetime. "That's the disease that torments my sister," he murmured. Before he could finish speaking, Xiaoqi pulled Xueming into the elevator and said, "Shu, don't ask too many questions. There are only two people in the elevator, Xueming and Xiaoqi." The elevator magnetic card was brushed once at the position of the sensor, and the button on the 51st floor lit up. Next, there was a long wait. Without anyone around, Xueming finally asked tentatively. "Just now, those passengers. I saw one of them also have red spots on his face. It's very similar to the strange disease on my sister's body." "Yes, they have the same disease." Xiao Qi hugged each other with both hands in a serious expression, without any joking intent. "That's why we arranged for you to meet the boss in advance." Xueming was worried and said, "Are many people suffering from this disease? Is there any help?" Xiaoqi: "Of course there is a way out, but this is the first time we have discovered the Vita imprint in the world of ordinary people." Xueming: "Vita imprint?" "Yes, the name of this disease is Vita brand. I thought you should have been mentally prepared when you knew the secrets of those two tickets." Xiao Qi turned his head and looked into Jiang Xueming's eyes. "We are not ordinary people, we can see anomalies in the ordinary world, things that are imperceptible to ordinary people's eyes. Or the money in their eyes becomes a ticket in our eyes. Have you not thought that our eyes and minds, our bodies and souls, are already beyond reason?" Xueming nodded. Xiao Qi continued. "The history of this station is very ancient. According to the platform administrator's grandfather, when he was young, this station had been in operation for a long, long time." Xueming asked again, "What are these passengers taking the train for?" "I'm new here and I'm not quite sure, but the boss and us workers have instructed us not to casually ask customers about their personal matters. I think it must be a very important thing, just like when you came to this station for your sister, other passengers also had to do things and reasons to go, which is why they boarded this train." Xiao Qi pondered, "There is one thing that can be confirmed. As I have seen with my own eyes, most passengers come here and have the Vita imprint on their bodies." Xueming swallowed his saliva and became nervous. "Will I also get this disease? Vita's imprint?" "At first, I didn't know." Xiao Qi comforted Xueming, "Only passengers who travel multiple times, run too far in the underground world, and stay in other places for too long, will have this kind of red spot on their bodies." Xueming urgently asked, "Do you have any other symptoms? If it is cured, will there be any sequelae? What does the name mean?" At first, it was very similar to the symptoms of lupus erythematosus. Xiao Qi carefully recalled the note in the employee handbook. The patient's skin would appear in large papular masses, which later evolved into fat nodules, accompanied by angina and pulmonary capillary embolism. The numbers on the elevator gradually rise. Xu Eming's mind gradually descended. This process will be very slow, lasting for a whole 10 months, like pregnancy. It will be accompanied by great pain. Xiao Qi's tone became colder and colder. When the patient's skin is completely red, other pathogenic microorganisms will rush in while the immune system collapses. For example, various cytomegalovirus and common hepatitis virus. At this time, the patient will start to have nightmares. The initial stage of failure in the later stage is in the patient's lungs and kidneys, accompanied by large areas of organ inflammation. At this time, the patient will begin to develop hysteria. Then a deep red butterfly mark will appear on the surface of the skin. If heart failure occurs, the mental world will also collapse, and the patient will completely fall into madness. At the critical moment, almost all patients' digestive tracts will stop working, and the fluid from the chest and lung membranes will transfer to the deceased lower body. Just like a pregnant woman waiting for delivery, just hearing these adjectives and thinking about his sister's miserable situation in the hospital bed made him sweat profusely in a fight with his teeth. Xiaoqi tried hard to recall, wanting to explain every detail in the employee handbook clearly. Finally, the umbilical cord that we tied tightly at birth. At the location of the navel eye, the high pressure generated by the fat accumulation in that part will rupture the skin and muscles, causing the patient to open the stomach. From inside, there will emerge necrotic contents and clusters of parasites coexisting with the human body. The patient's body is like a nutrient-rich culture dish, which has nurtured these lives over the past 10 months. Two common types of insects will appear. One of them, we call it Madam Bai, is a larva that is just the size of a grain of rice, in the shape of a gourd. Another type is the adult body of Lady Bai, which we call the mad butterfly. Its eye patterns resemble those of a butterfly, but all of them are blue. This red butterfly was born from the imprint of Vita and came into this world with the virus. After leaving the patient's body, Lady Bai will die in just a few seconds in the blink of an eye. But the crazy butterfly will fly further away, as if the deeper part of the underground world is its destination. The scales on its body, including itself, are also a source of transmission for the Vita imprint. As for the name of this disease, Xiaoqi touched his chin and pondered for a long time. Vita. Vita it originates from the Latin language family and represents the meaning of life. It should be translated as life imprint. How could this strange disease be called by such a name? Thinking that his sister was still suffering from the torment of the disease, Xu Eming clenched his fist and gritted his teeth. For those bugs, Xiao Qi patted Xu Eming's shoulder and asked him to calm down a bit. It's the symbol of life. You told me before that there is a specific medicine for this disease, Xu Eming asked aggressively. As long as I get on the train as agreed and return to the station, I will be given the specific medicine. Is it true? That's right, Mr. Jiang Xu Eming. Xiao Qi showed a friendly and amiable smile. Many of our passengers have already used this special medicine and cured the Vita imprint on their bodies. There are no sequelae left. However, a friendly and charming smile turned into a terrifying sneer. I'm not sure if you can accept it, but I still want to remind you, sir. The main extract of this medicine comes from the larvae of the mad butterfly. We use White Lady pharmaceutical, and its efficacy is very magical, almost able to cure any disease within your cognitive range. As long as it is a natural amniotic animal, whether it is a human or animal, this universal medicine can work on them or them. These words made Jiang Xu Eming's scalp tingle. If we say that the specific drug is made from larvae branded with Vita, the culture dish for cultivating larvae, I know what you're worried about, Xiao Qi grinned like a mind-reading witch. All the staff at the Nine Realms station, including pharmaceutical companies, will cherish the lives of every natural person in the world. Most of the panacea you receive is made from the pharmaceutical workshop of the factory using other methods. The elevator door has opened. The two of them walked out. Jiang Xueming didn't know whether what this woman was saying was true or false. But does he have any other options? What should I do? Jiang Xueming sank his mind. There is only one thing in my mind, get the medicine and save Bailu. We understand that your family's situation is quite special, Shao Qi led the way ahead, so we have arranged another bus for you directly, which can depart at any time. The long corridor outside the elevator, and outside the window, there are railway tracks suspended at an altitude of over 200 meters. Xueming saw it, he saw the red and black steam train. After getting on the train, the boss will personally come to see you and inform you of what you need to do on this journey. Arriving at the platform tower, Xiaoqi said as he took off the entire set of warm new clothes from the wardrobe hanger and changed them for Xueming. He changed into clothes and felt very close to his body, as if it was tailor-made for him. He asked, "What does the boss look like?" "You look up at the middle of the second and third platforms, above the tallest tower." Xiaoqi pointed to something. At the hands of Chiga, behind a towering tower shrouded in red mist. In the center of the 4 platforms, there is a portrait under the clock dial of the tallest tower. In the portrait, there is a young woman dressed in a burgundy suit. She sat in the study with old blinds behind her. The desk next to me was cluttered with documents, as if I had become a temporary model for an artist at work, looking very hasty. I had short black hair that was ear-length and didn't take care of it. Without any accessories, necklaces, rings or earrings, it is very simple. Her appearance is very ordinary, without makeup. There isn't much blood on the face. Under the moonlight and kerosene headlights, it appears lifeless. It is worth mentioning that she is still holding a black cat in her arms. Like a mischievous ghost who indulges in recklessness and arrogance, flipping over to its owner and showing its claws, grinning at the painter as if it were grinning. Is this the owner of this station? This ordinary woman surprised Xueming. Because Xiaoqi repeatedly complained before, the boss here was very artificial, and even the series of welcoming arrangements exuded a complex and frustrating sense of injustice. Yes, Xiaoqi stuffed a thick note the size of a palm into Mr. Xueming's pocket. "Mr. Xueming, it's time for you to get on the car." They stood by the boarding gate and heard railway workers tapping on the tracks, checking the movement of the pipelines and wheels. The loud whistle of the old administrator came from afar. All of this is like a dream to Xueming. From an ordinary person to a traveler in the underground world, one is about to embark on an unknown journey. He just took a step up the iron mesh steps at the boarding gate. Let Xiaoqi pull it down again. Wait a minute. Wait a minute. Xiaoqi shouted. He looked at Xiaoqi in confusion and said, "What's wrong? Do you have anything else to tell me? It's best to explain it all at once. You said you're a newcomer, and this matter concerns my sister's life, 7 brother. Yes, I'm right about what I said to you." Xiaoqi was a bit panicked and didn't know why. He was holding a handkerchief in his hand and said, "Come over here. There are some things I can't say in front of these staff members." Xueming leaned in and put his ear to 7 brother's mouth. "What I want to say is just my guess, you don't have to take it too seriously." Xiaoqi whispered softly. "The Vita imprint is a gift from this underground world to us extraordinary beings. It's so terrifying and so charming, mad butterflies can kill, and elixirs can save lives. There is no pie falling from the sky, and the boss never does a loss-making business. She arranges the journey for the passengers, and they harvest treasures at the end of the journey. All of these are probably equivalent. Mr. Xueming, you need to be careful, as I said to you at the beginning. You and I have an equal employment relationship. I don't want to have only one chance encounter with my first guest immediately after." Jiang Xueming's face added a lipstick mark. Opposite to the previous position, equal on both sides. Xiao Qi wiped it clean again. I hope you can return safely. This scene moved Xue Ming's heart a bit. To be honest, Chiga is someone he feels he can handle. Not to mention the difference between men and women, this was the first person he met who cared so much about him after leaving his hometown. But after getting on the car, he heard seven brothers screaming and laughing from a distance, and saw her jumping and running wildly towards the hallway of the housekeeping department. Along the way, she waved her small fist as if winning a boxing championship, crumpled Xueming's old clothes into a ball, and made a 3-point jump shot into the dirty clothes basket. Yahoo! I kissed again. I made a profit. This scene made Jiang Xueming's expression strange. The newly brewed friendship boat in his heart had not yet drifted far into the vast sea of life, and he fell into a strange vortex. He didn't know what expression to make. End of this chapter. Chapter 6. He needs to add money. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 6. He needs to add money. After getting on the car, Jiang Xueming casually found a seat to sit down. He intentionally or unintentionally looked at the other passengers in the carriage, trying to blend into the environment and gradually relax his tense nerves. But I don't know why. The other passengers in the carriage left their seats as if they had seen the plague god, and hurriedly went to other places. What's going on? For a moment, Xueming couldn't figure out what these passengers were afraid of or avoiding. It's better to be quiet. Thinking so, he cast his gaze elsewhere to relax his mind. Starting from the luggage rack at the entrance of the train, there are a total of 16 rows of seats in a carriage, which is considered a luxurious configuration with very abundant space. There are 3 seats in each row, and the aisle in the middle is wide enough to accommodate the dining table. The window is open without a protective net, allowing guests to lean against the window and enjoy the scenery, and even jump out of the car directly. Each position is equipped with a workbench and a dining sub-table. Xueming tried the weight and feel of the test table, and it should be high-quality solid wood furniture, repaired flat, and the top-notch paint and waxing techniques make the board feel like warm jade. The plush blankets on the seats and leather goods on the armrests, the fragrance every 2 rows, and the violin music hidden in the overhead luggage rack from the traceless sound system. These expensive and luxurious materials make Xueming feel very unfamiliar. He has never taken such a good car before. He has never seen a hotel with such a level of decoration. The sound of the flute outside the car window is long, and the air inside the car window is fragrant and sweet. He thought, if there was a cup of hot tea at this moment, Mr. Jiang Xueming, your afternoon tea has arrived. Before the person arrived, the woman's greeting in the hot tea soup arrived first. Xueming turned around and pushed a dining car from the aisle, parked next to his seat. Sorry to keep you waiting. The woman said hello. She was wearing a burgundy suit and short black hair, just like the portrait. Her movements of serving tea and water are spontaneous and natural, with agile hands and feet like a laborer, without any airs. To be honest, Xueming has never seen such a calm and solemn woman before. When she handed the tea, her waist and limbs were relaxed and graceful, her face expressionless, her cheekbones and nose bridge were high, her facial features were very 3-dimensional, and her eyes were small and very sharp. The bright red tea soup fell into the white porcelain cup without splashing any water, fast and fierce. Xueming wants to say that hello. But this woman seems to have never taken Jiang Xueming seriously. She just sat at the other end of the table, starting to pour herself a drink. At this moment, a pitch-black cat emerged from the dining car, very eye-catching. After it stepped onto the stage, it seemed as if it had become the absolute protagonist, taking away all the scenes. It is like an elegant lady, gently pacing on the table. Curiously looking at Jiang Xueming, a pair of big green eyes resembled his grandmother's emerald. Sometimes it turns into linear pupils, and sometimes it is round and perfect, as if constantly zooming in, trying to see Jiang Xueming clearly from inside out. Xueming felt that the little black cat was as clever as a child and wanted to tease the cat, but his hand, which had just reached out, froze halfway because the cat refused him. Specifically, it was this black cat, like a human, extending its front paw and pressing it against the back of Xueming's hand. Jiang Xueming felt embarrassed and gave a few dry smiles. Listen to a series of soft sounds. The sound of the steel chain cable biting against the car brake came. The sudden start of the train eased this embarrassment. He put aside his curiosity about the cat and seriously said hello to the stranger at the opposite table. "Hello, boss." "Hello, Jiang Xueming." The black cat spoke. Yes, the black cat opened its mouth. It stuck out its pink little tongue, revealing its white teeth, and the white hair under its throat shook along with its vocal organs, speaking human language. Its voice is very strange, which is exactly the same as that of the confidential number Xueming contacted in the hospital. Xueming looked at the woman and then at the black cat. Then repeat this process. Looking at women, it's pointless for them to shrug their shoulders and continue drinking tea. Looking at the black cat, it pursed its lips and squinted its eyes, with a hint of anger. Jiang Xueming finally came to his senses and understood, wanting to change his perspective. Who would have thought that the boss of this station was a cat? If I guess correctly, this one in front of me. Hiss. Prestige. Black cat interjected, "If you can't find adjectives, I can give you a dictionary, Mr. Jiang Xueming." "Yes, the majestic station master." Jiang Xueming changed his voice and followed the meaning of the station boss with a serious expression. The black cat seemed angry. It stood up with only two hind legs, hugging each other with its forelimbs, and its tail impatiently tapping on the table. "Did you just take her?" The longest claw popped out of the meat mat, pointing towards the woman behind it like the index finger of a palm. "Treating my servant like a station master. Don't lie to me, no one can lie to me at my station." "I," Xueming explained, "did think so when I first saw your portrait." "So you have memorized it for me, little red guy." The little black cat used its body length of only 40 centimeters and uttered a 4-meter-high dialogue, "I am the boss of this station, and it is the absolute main content of that portrait. The servant behind me, you can use her as a human flesh cat climbing frame to support me to climb up the main body of the picture." Xueming immediately nodded and said, "I understand." The black cat changed its position and sat cross-legged on the edge of the table, in front of Xueming. It waved its small paws and shook its head, pretending to be serious. "You have something to ask of me, and I have something to entrust you with. Let's get straight to the point. If we have something to say, we'll just leave." Xueming breathed a sigh of relief and said, "It's really great, boss." Black cat, "Oh no, now it should be respectfully referred to as boss." This boss briefly explained the main purpose of this journey to Xueming. "What you need to do is follow this train to the corresponding station, and the broadcast will announce your name 10 minutes before parking to remind you to get off." Xueming. "What do you want to do after getting off the car?" "Go observe things outside the station with your heart." The boss bluntly stated Xueming's main task. "Record what you see and experience in your passenger log, be detailed and appropriate. Don't write it as a travelogue." "And then what?" Jiang Xueming immediately took out the handbook that Xiaoqi stuffed into his clothes, with a pen in the folder. He listened while taking notes, afraid of missing any details. "I will arrange a comfortable and safe journey for each passenger relative to themselves," the boss continued. "For newcomers like you who are entering the underground world for the first time, the time you spend on the train should be at least 3 hours. During this time, you need to clarify the rules and regulations in the travel log. You can ask your seniors or fellow travelers for their experience in traveling. What is the name of the place I'm going to? What will I encounter? How long will I stay? Is it dangerous?" Jiang Xueming continued to take notes without looking up. The boss speaks at an extremely fast pace and answers fluently. The place you are going to is tentatively named SW. The station has just been built and will need to be renamed in the future. There are not many security personnel. However, the concentration of spiritual disasters in that region is not high, and the madness index is also very low. The inhabitants of the unknown region star realm are not very aggressive, and they still hope to communicate with people from the outside world. Simply put, it's very safe. According to the information provided by previous passengers, it is a feng shui treasure trove suitable for building a transfer hub. After getting off the car, our security personnel will take you to the nearest supply station to rest. After 2 days of sightseeing, you can return to the Jiujie station and receive rewards. Xue Ming left scribbled handwriting in the log and added a few unfamiliar terms. Southwest stands for place name and temporary name of the station. Spiritual disasters and their concentration represent dangerous disasters. Unknown areas should refer to unexplored places in the underground world. What the people of the star realm are talking about may be underground creatures or other things. Let's leave a question mark and check the log for detailed explanations later. The madness index should be related to the madness butterfly and Vita brand. What this seemingly innocent little black cat said is not simple. This journey is by no means what it claims to be, safe and comfortable. Xue Ming clarified the logic behind it and continued, you need to build the railway further away. The boss snapped his fingers and made a crisp sound as his knuckles and claws bounced against him. That's right. We passengers can see things that ordinary people cannot see, and are very sensitive to unknown dangers and the spiritual disaster you mentioned. We can take on some of the troubleshooting work in railway construction projects. That's right. I like you, your understanding is good. You're very smart. Like the pilot's navigator, carrying a guidebook for you, recording the situation around each station node, and possibly coming into contact with some unknown creatures. You call them the inhabitants of the star realm. It's best to uncover a part of the unknown secrets in the underground world. Is that correct? The boss nodded in satisfaction and said, yes. 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 Xue Ming continued, in return, will I receive a panacea? Boss beamed with excitement and emphasized correction, specifically, it was a complete journey. Can you provide me with a valuable travel log? And I will give you 2 doses of a panacea, which can not only help your sister recover her health, but also keep you in good travel condition. Xue Ming remained silent for a long time. When he heard this elusive price tag, he felt a faint sense of unease in his heart. Boss, with all due respect, don't think things too well. This is not equal. Your employees have always used fair and equal rules to handle things, which must be a ritualistic quirk that you repeatedly impose. I'll write you a diary and a guidebook. This is just one thing I've accomplished, but you're all focused on thinking about giving me 2 doses of medicine. What are you really thinking in your mind? What are you thinking? Do you think I'm lying to you? I'm trying to harm you. The boss, a clever little ghost, immediately changed his tone, using witty and harsh words. I take back the previous sentence. I don't like smart people at all. Listen to what you mean, don't you have to talk about it? No, besides medicine, I also need to add money. Xue Ming immediately increased the price. Plus a lot of money. I'm a very practical person, a cowardly and lascivious layman. I don't know if the panacea you're talking about really cures all kinds of illnesses as you say. But the tickets you sent me before were all real money. The little black cat was lying on the edge of the table, waving its paws in a casual manner. What do you mean, Mr. Xue Ming? Jiang Xue Ming closed the log and put away his pen, saying, Boss, I can't stay underground for a long time. My sister is still waiting for me to go home. If you have figured it out, you can also include the money in the equivalent terms and give me more difficult commissions. The little black cat pursed its lips, seeming to find the man in front of it very boring. After a long time, the boss seemed to have figured it out. Finally, it spoke up and stared at Jiang Xue Ming with great interest, as if discovering a novel toy. For the station, ordinary world banknotes are like waste paper. It changed its face as quickly as it flipped through a book, becoming serious. Mr. Jiang Xueming, you were really humble when you talked about money. I don't know what you've experienced, nor do I know you. There are also others who have offered me even more outrageous conditions, including those who have been involved in power, sex, and money. Some even want to go to the moon, but usually they don't understand what equivalent trading is, and they offer outrageous prices with outrageous goods. I really don't know what equivalent these waste papers can salvage from you. You're giving me a difficult problem. This time, even if I made a loss-making deal, I won't ask you for anything. Jiang Xueming reached out and didn't even discuss the amount of money. Deal. The little black cat laughed heartily and extended its paws. Deal. Before parting, the boss gracefully bowed and thanked Jiang Xueming, like a polite gentleman, and then jumped back into the servant's arms without any gentlemanly demeanor. Mr. Xueming, you are very special. Jiang Xueming raised his eyebrows and asked, how can I say this? The kitten yawned and said, do you know why other passengers in the carriage see you like they see a disaster star, saying, go, and then leaving? Why? Jiang Xueming was puzzled. Because you are like a dangerous person, their inspiration is warning them to leave you immediately, and travelers will also rely on this inspiration to avoid disasters during their journey. The little kitten patted its paws and pointed at the sky, making a vivid expression as it said, you give people a cold and cruel feeling. If given the opportunity, I will definitely send you to the Inspiration Review Room for a comprehensive security check. There may be many prohibited items in your soul, and every newcomer should pass the security check before getting on the car. Unfortunately, time is not enough. Xueming did not make any statement, he just opened the log and memorized a few new vocabulary words. It's like a killer studying the behavior patterns of a target and figuring out their travel habits. In his opinion, understanding these things is not difficult. Just like how he usually cuts his tendons, heads, brains, and beef offal, and uses a knife to deal with the veins of the rolling knife meat. For a person who sells braised dishes at a subway station and the kitchen staff makes red and white tables with knives, this is also a philosophy. Their complex tendons and blood clots often amaze chefs. What shameless thing did this cow do with the meat on its body before its death, in order to cause congestion of connective tissue, lymph nodes, or organs in areas that should not have been congested, and lumps in areas that should not have been congested? It became like a pile of sludge filled with anaerobic glue, and the glue had dried through, twisted into tough and elastic ropes. It's incredibly difficult to separate them clearly with a knife and water, but simply putting them into a pot and boiling them until they're cooked, then taking them out and cutting them, trans fats and organ tissue fluid can turn this dish into a terrifying dish. This metaphor may sound complicated, but it is actually very simple. Although it is a piece of beef offal, a cheap item worth only a dozen yuan per kilogram, not many people care about its taste. But Jiang Xueming cares very much. There are no two identical muscles and brains, and there are no two identical knife roots. Every day's work is about peeling off the cocoons, marveling at the large cold storage where animal carcasses are stored and what top-quality livestock are being sent in. Every day, my mind is on the brink of collapse, curled up in a pigeon cage that is difficult for humans to live in, and I have come to know some monsters and monsters. He wrote a suicide note in the diary. If I can't come back, please give this log to my sister. She is in room 405 of Building 2 of the Hong Kong Anshan Health Center and Sanatorium, with the attending doctor named Li Kongming. Jiang Bailu, brother has something to tell you. Brother is going to a far, far place, 17 kilometers underground. I want to find a medicine that can cure your illness. If my brother dies, it will turn into sand, soil, followed by clouds, wind, and sun, into rain in the sky, and into the sea. But he will not become a human again. Don't search for another Xueming brother in life, that's not me. I wouldn't take any chances, hoping for another Jiang Bailu to appear in my life, that's not you. There are no two pieces of beef offal with the same taste and shape in the world. They are both unique, just like every book I have read, every person I have seen, every breath, every blink. Just like when we were young, looking at the world with curious eyes, everything is new. We haven't grown up yet, and it's still too early for us to become adults with worried faces. We are the first and last time being human, and it is inevitable that we will encounter bad things. Don't blame or mourn for your illness. Live a good life. I won't leave you. The train runs quietly and steadily on the railway. The suspension bridge extends all the way towards a deeper abyss. The scenery outside the window is sometimes bright and sometimes dark, with open and distant underground cavities, various fluorescent plants, and electrical pipelines for lighting, forming a magnificent and stunning scene. The boss leaned against the window, smelling the smell of sulfur rushing towards him, carrying the sparks that burst out when the magma lake bubbles exploded. Its cat face showed laziness and comfort, with an intoxicated expression. It described, "That little man was very special just now, I really liked him, I need to find a way to keep him." "Are you still thinking about him?" The servant said with a cold face and a stern smile, "It's really rare. You rarely pay attention to a newcomer. We have already sent him many tickets, which can be used as money. For us, tickets are just waste paper, and we can print as much as we want." The boss raised his tall glass, and the golden light of the magma lake reflected in his green eyes. "But he insisted on accounting for this waste paper with me," he said. "It sounds like an honest person." The servant poured sheep's milk into the boss's tall cup. "No, he's not honest at all." The boss shook his head and said, "Didn't you hear me? He wants me to be honest." The servant asked in confusion, "Do you still like him?" "He understands my aesthetics and wants me to do fair trade honestly." The black cat teased its little tongue as it slowly mixed the goat's milk into its mouth. "I just like that about him." End of this chapter. Chapter 7. 2 tickets for top happy people. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 7. 2 tickets for top happy people. The railway tracks and steel wheels swayed the carriage slightly. It has been over an hour since Jiang Xueming left the station. He didn't know how far the train had traveled, nor did he know what was waiting for him at the destination. But he is ready to leave the last few words on the will. Flip to the passenger guide directory on the front page. The sudden light source diverted his gaze. He looked out the window, as the train had just rushed out of the narrow tunnel, and the surrounding terrain became vast and distant. Wherever he could see, there was a crimson magma lake, as well as dangerous mountains and rocks far beyond the lake. 8 huge steel-framed bridges support dozens of railways, and red and green signal lights stand on the switch points between each railway. Jiang Xueming could vaguely see that on the nearby railway tracks, other trains would pass by every few minutes. He also saw that in a darker place, at the location where the red warning light was lit, something seemed to flash by. Unable to resist his inner curiosity, he leaned half of his body out of the car window to see clearly the railway that was emitting an alarm light source in the dark cave. Under the orange light of the magma lake, the foundation of the railway had been destroyed, and the rotten steel bars fell into the lake and immediately melted into molten iron. Safety warnings and construction maintenance signs were erected under the red light signs. Upon closer inspection, he could vaguely discern the dark shadows in the cave road. Those shadows are not like humans, let alone construction equipment. Amidst the chaotic light and shadows, there seemed to be many monsters hidden in the cave. Their buzzing sound as they flapped their wings spread far and wide, even though they were hundreds of meters apart. Xueming can still hear that crazy noise, which makes people restless. Right now, right now. One hand slammed onto Jiang Xueming's shoulder, pulling him back into the carriage from outside the window. "Brother! What are you looking at?" Xueming was quite frightened, not by the unknown creatures in the cave. But just now, half of his body was outside the window. A sudden slap hit on the shoulder, almost knocking out Xueming's soul. He was violently pulled back into his seat with a tremendous force, and then he saw the uninvited passenger, also constantly looking outside, struggling to get close to the window and hearing the noisy voice of that guy. "What's that? It looks so good. Brother, what were you looking at just now? Which direction?" As the passenger almost climbed to the roof, he was still complaining incessantly. "Where is it? Hey brother. Why aren't you talking?" Jiang Xueming finally regained his senses and explained, "Oh. I saw a cave with a red warning light on, undergoing maintenance and repair. But in the eyes of that cave, there seems to be a monster. Hi. I thought it was something strange." The passenger outside the car window was agile, and in the blink of an eye, he crawled back and stood on the aisle, taking pictures of the mud, dust, and coal ash on his body. Xueming finally saw the appearance of this traveler clearly. That is a tall young man, almost 1.9 meters tall, with broad shoulders and thick knuckles. Like Xueming, the person was wearing the standard long dress assigned by the customer service department. The pink shirt and sturdy chest muscles can be seen from the collar of the long robe, and the muscles in the thighs and calves bulge, filling the jeans. The gold zippers on the big leather boots are very eye-catching. The person took off his cowboy hat, and under the illumination of the magma lake and the cold light in the carriage, his features looked very young. He looks only 18 or 19 years old, without a beard, with thick eyebrows and big eyes. His nose bridge is high and straight, and his lips are thick and fleshy. Black eyes account for half of the eyes and are full of vitality. The messy brown hair covered the ears and eyebrows, and when she lifted her head with her hands, it became refreshing and neat. After the passenger returned to the carriage, he threw a large backpack next to Xueming's seat and sat across from him casually. The seating space originally arranged for the guests was relatively spacious. But this huge backpack almost blocked the way out, with no intention of moving it. Like this reckless young man giving Jiang Xueming a warning. "Can you put away your things?" Jiang Xueming frowned. He was pushed by this guy outside the car window just now, and now the way out of his seat is blocked. "Oh. I'm sorry." The young man immediately stood up and threw his backpack to the next seat. Jiang Xueming thought to himself. This guy doesn't look very smart. When the young man returned to Xueming's opposite table seat, he took out his travel information card and ticket from his shirt pocket and said to Xueming seriously, "Hey brother, the boss arranged for me to follow you and asked me to go to the same place as you." Jiang Xueming remained silent, looking at the reckless kid in front of him with a suspicious expression. The young man hunched his body and propped his chin with both hands, leaned towards Jiang Xueming's end and continued, "My surname is Bu, and my name is Bulyoshing. You can just call me Axing." "How should I call you?" "Jiang Xueming." Hey. That's great. That's a great name." Ah Xing clapped his hands and smiled. "Wu Go is as clear as frost and snow, as towering as a shooting star. I think you look very reliable." When we arrived at our destination, the task assigned by the boss was not just a matter of getting it right and killing it recklessly. "Hello Axing." Hee. "Ah Ming, you too." So, being brainless and unhappy can be considered as a greeting. After Bulyoshing sat down, he never had time again. This young man fully explained to Xueming what top-level chatterbox is. "I am a local of HK, Leo." "Amin, what zodiac sign are you?" "I see you don't like to talk, it must be Cancer." "Cancer people are all sulky. There are many beautiful little ladies in the station. I asked for a few phone numbers, do you want them? This is our first time meeting, and I don't have any gifts for you. The passengers at this station all have stories. Why did you come here, Amin? Can you tell me your story? Make me happy. I don't want to say it anymore. Why are you staring at me fiercely?" Xueming's anger level visibly increased, and he secretly pondered whether it might have been during his first meeting that he made the cat angry. Otherwise, how could the boss arrange such a guy to be with him? It's just top-level mental torture. He covered his forehead and reluctantly managed to cope with his work, saying, "No, I'm not angry." "It's good if you're not angry." Bulyoshing suddenly snapped up and talked about the accident track just now. "Hey, like you, this is my first time taking a train at this station. There are many things we don't understand, we need to help each other and remind each other." Jiang Xueming. "Well, you're right." Axing continued to explain, "The shadow you saw in the accident section of the cave just now is not a monster, but a maintenance worker working at the Jiujie station." "Maintenance personnel." "That's right, it's also the first time I've seen those things." Axing opened the train log and snatched the log from Xueming's hand, flipping to the same page. "Look, it's written in the train log directory. Currently, the railway maintenance unit at the station is the Shaiyang 3 type. Shaiyang was originally a strange creature in the underground world, with their presence in blocks 47 to 88. They resemble dragonflies in the suborder Heteroptera, hence their name Shaiyang. The body length of adult sheep is around 160 cm to 200 cm, and the body size of females is larger than that of males. 140 years ago, individuals who could communicate with humans appeared in the population of sheep and learned human language. The research station infers that it is likely due to the long-term contact between Shaiyang and the inhabitants of the star realm, who gained mysterious knowledge of the star realm and caused the mutation. Soon after, these insects became the new employees of the station. They can fly over suspension bridges with engineering materials that are several times their own weight, and have the ability to reverse in the air. In modern society, the flight maneuvers of helicopters may not be able to catch up with these gifted giant insects. After 3 generations of evolution, the research station has tailored engineering protective gear and communication equipment for Shaiyang. There are still many uncivilized individuals of Shaiyang in unknown areas, which are also important criteria for detecting madness index and spiritual disasters. Axing beamed and spoke confidently, "How about it? It's amazing, isn't it? When I saw this thing on the book page, I thought to myself, there must be oxygen-rich land in the underground world, otherwise how could these insects grow so big? And there must be a food-rich biosphere." Axing. Jiang Xueming quickly flipped through the manual without looking up. "Tell me your story. I want to know more about you. Why did you come to this station?" Bulyoshing was stunned for a moment and said, "Do you want to know me?" "Yes." Xueming looked up and sat upright. "We're going to the same place and doing the same thing. In this dangerous underground world, we have to rely on each other. Relying on each other is our destiny." Ah Xing finally got serious, put away his thoughts, and said nothing serious. "I'm here to have fun." Jiang Xueming seemed to not understand. Step Meteor repeated it again. "I'm here to have fun, but I think life is too boring and I need to find some excitement. My mother has 2 plots of land in the south and east districts, with Victoria Harbor visible across the sea. My life has been arranged clearly from childhood to adulthood. I have played all kinds of extreme sports before. My mother wants me to go back to the UK to study and live a good life, but I don't want to study." Jiang Xueming asked again, "How did you get your ticket?" Bulyoshing replied, "I stole it. I want to experience it in prison. I remember stealing a train ticket, but the police officer insisted it was money. At that time, I felt something was wrong. Do you want to go to jail?" This goes beyond Jiang Xueming's understanding and belongs to a knowledge-blind spot. "Why?" Bulyoshing lowered his head and his expression became disheartened. "I want to know what it looks like in a prison cell. A friend told me that the rent is so expensive now, and even if we live in a remote area, it will cost more than 3,000 yuan. Fish egg rice starts at 30 yuan, and fresh fruits can easily cost 5 or 6,000 yuan per month. How can newly graduated college students survive here? The way out for young people is to go to prison, have free food and accommodation, go to bed on time, and not have to squeeze the subway. From what you mean, are you here to experience life at the station? Jiang Xueming pursed his lips, feeling that the person in front of him was very unreliable. I can count on it. Bu Liuxing became anxious and wanted to prove his ability. I'm very impressive. Look at my skills. Before he could finish speaking, the reckless young man had to dig out the window again. Axing stepped on the window edge, his whole body hanging outside, like a calm child, pouting to prove himself. Jiang Xueming. Did you see it? I'm not afraid. The strong wind outside the window made Ah Xing's clothes sound like hunting, and beneath the abyss lies a golden-red magma lake. The train rushed past the suspension bridge and crashed into the tunnel entrance. In that moment, Jiang Xueming quickly pulled the reckless ghost back from outside the window. Just so close, the meteor is about to turn into flesh and mud on the entrance rock wall of the tunnel. After entering the tunnel, the strong changes in temperature and air pressure inside and outside the car caused the entire body to start shaking. Bu Liuxing was still in shock. When he was pulled into the carriage, he felt a pain in his neck, as if a lion had bitten his throat and dragged him along. When he realized it, he had already fallen onto the aisle. Go see Xueming again, he still had that indifferent expression, with his right nail flipped outwards, carrying the bruises left from tearing clothes, and gradually repairing them with a pair of nail clippers. Bu Liuxing touched his body, wiped away the cold sweat from his head, and foolishly stood up for a while. Oh! It's so exciting! He returned to his position and changed back to his fierce appearance. Mr. Xueming. I saw you for the first time. I knew you were very reliable. Jiang Xueming waved his hand like a fly and said calmly, let me tell you why I came to this station. After all, we need to cooperate, and I hope you can take this journey seriously. Bu Liuxing said, okay. I will definitely listen carefully. Immediately afterwards, Xueming truthfully told the boy about his own experience and his sister's condition. At first, he just hoped that this unscrupulous boy could be a little more serious. Enter working mode. Later on, he mentioned that he had started writing a will. Go and see the demeanor of the meteor, it seems that something is wrong. The big boy had a red nose and watery eyes, so he cried out. No. Jiang Xueming didn't want this result. Don't do this. I'm sorry, I'm just so sentimental, Bu Liuxing replied as he took out a tissue from his backpack and wiped his nose. Since I was young, I love to cry. I can't cry too easily. By the time Xueming finished speaking, Bu Liuxing was already sobbing uncontrollably. This kid is lying on the table, his head buried in his arms, and a whimpering sound can be heard from the cuffs of his clothes. Xueming explained the whole story clearly and instructed, so, did you understand? I understand. Bu Liuxing gritted his teeth and lifted his head, blowing his nose and clenching his fists to cheer up. I will definitely save my sister from the hands of the disease. Don't worry. That. Xueming felt something was wrong, but couldn't say, that's my sister, not your sister. Ah. I feel like I'm burning, and the emotions that have been silent for a long time are about to emerge from my chest. Bu Liuxing tightly grasped Xueming's hand. Without a doubt, brother Jiang Xueming, just now, at the entrance of that tunnel, you saved my life. Ah Xing's scorching gaze made it difficult to look directly at him, and he confidently said. Every word you said to me is firmly engraved in my heart. Our lives were originally like two parallel tracks, finally intersecting on this train. Let me understand. This is my mission. Jiang Xueming whispered softly, it's good for everyone to watch fewer cartoons. Bu Liuxing said relentlessly, I will always be by your side, sharing life and death with you in times of hardship. I will not leave you until I repay this kindness. Jiang Xueming. Okay. Bu Liuxing wiped away his tears and sat upright like Xueming, like Ah Ming, you want to know me, and I also want to get to know you better. Oh, Xueming felt a great impact on his spirit. Being with this kid was more terrifying than any strange scene he had ever seen. You can ask. Step Meteor took out his log book and pen, ready to make a record. After a long time, it seems that I don't know what to ask. It seems like I have finished asking everything I need to know. So he asked. What zodiac sign are you from? End of this chapter. Chapter 8. Rare People's Palace. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 8. Rare People's Palace. Sweet female voices were heard on the train broadcast. Passengers, the train is heading towards the station of Rare People's Palace. Passengers from the 4th, 8th, and 11th sections, including Niu Xiaotsue, Wang Kong, Yumiko Longgong, and Ben Klein, are requested to prepare for their disembarkation in advance. After you disembark, the station attendants and security staff will proactively contact you to arrange a 3-day sightseeing itinerary for the Rare People Palace. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your contribution to the troubleshooting work at Jiujie Station. For other passengers who have not received the designated notice, if you also get off at the Rare People Palace, please make way for the designated passengers in the broadcast. Thank you for your cooperation. The train will stop at the station for 10 minutes. Please do not get off or move around without permission for other passengers who have not arrived at the station to avoid delaying the journey. Please carefully check your belongings when getting off the car to avoid forgetting them. Wishing you a pleasant journey. The golden molten slurry reflects the red and black iron car skin. Xueming leaned against the window and saw the city and station bridge approaching in the distance. That is an isolated island on a lava lake, with its flat land walls submerged all the way into the lake, like a foundation that has been piled up bit by bit with sturdy and heat-resistant clay cubes, spending countless human and material resources. Above that is a magnificent palace. It is like a huge honeycomb, divided into layered living areas except for the railway platform in the main warehouse. The east and west sides are densely packed with elevated bridges, and motorcycles pass through the entrances and exits of various palaces and cities to travel to other places. It is also the main means of transportation for citizens. Wow, Ah Xing changed to the row next to Xueming, afraid that he wouldn't be able to see the city clearly, like a curious baby. This little brother is almost sticking to Xueming's face. The Rare Palace. Xueming silently recited the name, which was also the first stop he reached by train after arriving in the underground world. The passenger log said that this place is a trade transfer station in the underground world. Axing patted his shoulder and explained to him, "Look, the highest entrance to Gongshi is a commercial street inside." Xueming asked, "What can I buy?" "It's not written in the log," Axing replied, "but you can go to the reception center of the Rare People Palace to get a shopping guide. There are all kinds of things available, and you can also buy strange things entrusted by the people in the Star Realm." Xingjie Zhumin. Xueming has seen this word in his diary. In the perception of research station staff, they are more similar to ancient creatures. Few extraterrestrial creatures can directly communicate with humans, and for the two, the thinking patterns and social structures of different species are completely different, making it almost impossible to reach a consensus. Although both are intelligent living beings, the cognitive gap is even greater than that between humans and dogs. These living organisms exist in various forms, some as large as mountains and some as small as dust and sand. The organs on his body are also diverse, and just the illustrations in the passenger log make Xueming dizzy and dizzy. In summary, anything related to the Star Realm represents danger and opportunity. In the travel record, it is recorded that one encounter with the Star Realm ended in an extremely tragic and terrifying outcome. 64 years ago, humans had a connection with a celestial creature called Panini. The appearance of this creature resembles layers of jellyfish, floating in the air through a strange and inexplicable geometric rectangular force field, like a balloon. When humans first discovered this creature, they thought it was just a low-intelligence life form like a sheep. But after observing for 16 months, the research station found that these alien shapes, which looked like panini hamburgers, could draw and write on rock walls using an invisible rectangular force field, and could perform basic mathematical operations. These panini do not use numbers, but instead use force to vibrate a rhythmic rhythm in the air, using powerful bioelectricity to stimulate the glowing moss underground, emitting high-frequency light source rhythms. They are like singing, showcasing all these rational and mathematically logical things. They will gather together with the infrastructure towers of the station, and they will also communicate with each other, as if they are gathered together to discuss the towers, pondering why their territory has such a big and bright guy. Their exquisite rectangular force field can be carved into scaled models similar to electric towers using rocks. Unfortunately, panini cannot detect human bioelectricity. And the first time humans made physical contact with panini, there was severe interstellar pollution. In the human immune system, there are many probiotics and symbiotic parasites from the surface, as well as viruses that have been fighting against the human immune system for 500 million years. After many panini came into contact with humans, their fragile physical bodies were immediately ravaged by these things and turned into a highly intense epidemic. 7 months later, all 6 population settlements in Panini experienced several major epidemics. In the end, the extremely common infectious disease in the human world caused the death of Panini in the entire 55-district plot. When they die, those invisible and intangible force fields become radiation signals spreading out in circles. From then on, people never saw the singing jellyfish again, and Panini was never found in any other land, just like a terrifying legend circulating among the Panini tribe. They used their last bit of strength to scream at other clans, urging them to leave here and escape to a deeper underground world. The core building of the rare palace is the Electric Tower, also known as the Panini Tower. The meaning of rare people itself refers to the extremely rare ethnic group of people. It reminds all intelligent beings in the underground world to be careful before contact, as it is not just hostility that destroys each other. The train started slowly. Xue Ming saw the magnificent palace getting farther and farther away, and asked, Xing, which country's currency is used to buy things in that city? It's not mentioned in the log. Bulyoxing's eyes lit up and he said, in the underground world, people use Polarization for trading. Occasionally, the Jujia station also issues some blood butterfly shopping vouchers, mostly used to exchange for elixirs. If necessary, the boss should give us rewards. Polarization is a clean energy source in the underground world, and our car can drive so fast, using this type of energy. Originally, Jiang Xueming was still lucky and wanted to spend money to get a panacea from that rare market, but now this childish idea has disappeared. On the radio, sweet female voices were heard again. Passengers, the train has already departed. The next station is in District 71, with the temporary border area code SW. Mr. Jiang Xueming and Mr. Bulyoxing, who have 15 carriages, please wait for 40 minutes before getting off. The train will pass through the Dusk Pass, during which there will be a natural phenomenon of day and night alternation. Passengers who arrive at the Dusk Pass for the first time should not panic. Patients with albinism are advised to pull down the car window in advance to avoid exposure to strong light. If you have any allergic symptoms, please reach the connection point of the carriage, and the cabin crew will contact a doctor for you. Thank you for taking this train, and I wish you a pleasant journey. Day and night alternation. Jiang Xueming didn't quite understand the meaning of this word. Xing continued, I don't know either, it's not written in the notebook. I was wandering around the station before, and I heard people say it seems like a strange phenomenon has only recently appeared. The inclination angle of the car window is getting higher and higher. It's like climbing a hill. In a few minutes, the entire outside of the car window lit up. What's the situation? Jiang Xueming looked out the window, and the train had already rushed out of the magma lake plot, as if rushing out of a cliff pass. The roar of the train echoed through the vast plains, transforming the originally pitch-black dome into a vast expanse of white clouds. In the dry and cold air, The strong wind rushed into the carriage like a knife, causing Xue Ming's cheeks to ache. Wow! Is it dawn? Bu Liuxing stared at the clouds and mist in the sky. In just 1 minute, a huge fireball slowly floated into the sky. It is like the sun, illuminating this boundless plain. What is that thing? Jiang Xueming didn't think it was the real sun, because it was a bit too big. Using arms as a comparison, the orange fireball in the sky is almost as big as a fist. I don't know, Bu Liuxing casually replied, what's going on? Did you bring your phone, Minga? Can you take a photo on Baidu? Jiang Xueming was about to take a photo with his phone when his camera was instantly burned out by the warm light source emitted by this eerie and inexplicable sun. He didn't say anything and had to give up in frustration. He asked the meteor step by step. Axing, why don't you take photos? Xing clapped his hands and said, my phone also burned. I thought it was an accident, so I wanted you to give it a try. Do you know that the camera burns and I have to shoot it? Jiang Xueming felt that the guy in front of him was really a bit unreasonable. Axing looked innocent and said, didn't we just try it out? You. Xue Ming gritted her teeth and saw Xing's sincere and innocent expression, but in the end, she didn't say anything. Now this top-tier musician is fidgeting from his huge backpack and pulling out 2 new phones. Come on, brother Ming. Use it for now, as I'll compensate you. Jiang Xueming was stunned when he saw the new phone on the desktop and said, ah. Xing's face still had the same look of regret as before, with a smile full of energy. I always carry several phones with me when I go on long trips. When climbing or parachuting, I only have 1 phone. What if it breaks down? Jiang Xueming wanted to interrupt, but he keeps fighting. Xing muttered, don't be so bad. Jiang Xueming wanted to interrupt, but why is it a couple's version? Oh. Originally, it was me and my security officer alone. Xing didn't pay much attention to this matter, his expression was indifferent. The security officer said that the GPS navigation carried by this thing has better pairing performance than military phones with 3 defenses. His wife took one of them and he can find it anywhere. Later, I specifically bought this one. I understand all the principles, Xue Ming asked again, why did you give me the pink one? Xing squinted his eyes and grinned, saying, do you really care? Xue Mingmian had no expression and could clearly feel it. The air around this man is gradually getting colder. Sometimes, the desire to kill cannot be hidden in the eyes. Xing immediately smiled and pushed another navy blue phone over, saying, hee hee. It's a joke. I'll use the pink one. My shirt is also pink. I just like the pink one. Jiang Xueming calmly changed his SIM card and turned on the phone function. Sure enough, he could easily locate Xing's location at any time, and the positioning was very accurate, able to export maps with centimeter-level accuracy. He was thinking that such accurate navigation was not quite right to solve the problem of sexual harassment. But soon he felt relieved because this phone was very user-friendly and had much better functions than his original elderly phone. Xue Ming. Thank you. You're welcome. Hey, Bu Liuxing's expression was very exaggerated and super happy. Xue Ming asked again, I will pay it back later. Do you want to buy anything? How about going to the Rare Palace and treating you to a meal if there's a chance? Where are we going? I don't like to eat. Bu Liuxing bent down, which made the 2 of them equal in height, talking on the same plane. How about this? Minga. He spoke to Jiang Xueming with a serious tone. I don't want anything else, I just want to see if there are any super ancient race sisters from the Star World in the rare market, and I want to sleep with them. Jiang Xueming. What? I want to sleep with intelligent beings of other races, said Bu Liuxing confidently. I think this is the ultimate dream of every human. What do you think? Jiang Xueming's hand speed was extremely fast, and when he played with the card reader, he immediately replaced his old phone. He believes that even if a camera is broken, it will not affect its use. Then, with an elegant and timeless gesture, he pushed back Ah Xing's gift. Sorry, I offended you. End of this chapter. Chapter 9. Fangfeng Settlement. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 9 Fangfeng Settlement. The train has arrived at the station. Jiang Xueming had already prepared to get off the car before the broadcast. He leaned against the car door glass and watched as the dense stone forest in the wilderness approached. In just a few minutes, it started raining in the sky. To be precise, this kind of rainwater is more like condensate from a huge underground cavity, with a lot of noise hitting the glass. Upon closer inspection, many gray particles can be seen in the water stains, seemingly dust. He casually took a large black umbrella from the self-service shelf and brought a few breads for dinner, which were originally prepared for the guests and did not require any additional payment. Then, the car door opens with the roar of the hydraulic valve. A damp and cold air rushed towards her, causing Xueming to tightly cover her collar and fasten the buttons of her coat. After stepping out of the car door, he followed the broadcast prompts and walked all the way to the security department of the station. He walked very fast, with great strides. His shoes stepped on the damp iron road, splashing circles of gray-white water. The surroundings were sparsely populated, and no other passengers were seen on the platform. Only Ah Xing ran behind him, carrying a backpack, and later caught up. Axing walked and asked with a smile, "Why don't you wait for me? I have a lot of things." Xueming. You can keep up. Axing. Hey. Do you trust me so much? Xueming. I trust your muscles and height. Ah Xing hasn't understood the implied meaning of Xueming yet, it's just a lot of fun. At the side door of the exit passage, the two turned into the security department. Just like to save power, the lights on both sides of the road gradually dim. The road was narrow and narrow, with many employee storage cabinets on one side. Xueming strode over it with a meteor, and the meteor could only cautiously arch in sideways. And then to the office entrance of the department, Xueming, with the principle of efficiency first and time as her sister's life, didn't knock on the door and broke in directly. The specifications of the office and hallway are the same, very narrow. At first glance, it appears to be only 20 square meters. The walls on both sides are crowded with filing cabinets and information bags, filled with incomprehensible symbol notes and yellow light strips, like props used for tracking in the wilderness. There is a foreigner with blonde hair and blue eyes sitting at the desk, dressed in the attire of an armed personnel. The black nylon tight vest, mall system, lighting fixtures and bullet bags, tweezers and pliers, and battlefield emergency kit are all available. On the armband of this security personnel, there is a black cat with a grim smile and the station name in both Chinese and English. Xueming immediately expressed his intention and said, "Hello, I'm going to SW. The boss sent me here. According to the boss, I need to follow you now and find a place to stay. Then I will conduct a 2-day investigation in SW, right?" The security personnel did not immediately respond, just nodded and stared intently at Jiang Xueming. That kind of gaze made Jiang Xueming feel very uncomfortable. In a low-light environment, the security guard's eyes do not refract any light source, like an empty zombie walking around, claiming to be looking at something, but in fact, the pupils do not make a focused micro-reaction, as if they have directly penetrated Xueming's skin and flesh, as if to see his brain tissue clearly. The soul of the security personnel finally returned to his body. He snapped his fingers nimbly, quickly stood up, and his movements were as agile as Xueming's. Okay. Cleaning up the messy desktop and taking away the black waterproof bag from the container, this security guard instantly turned into an efficient work machine, even snatching away Ah Xing's backpack and leading the way ahead. Let's go. Bu Liuxing couldn't figure it out as he watched this scene. He tugged at Mr. Xueming's sleeve and whispered, "What's going on? What's the situation?" Xue Ming doesn't quite understand, but the current attitude of this security guard makes him feel very grounded. Speak less, act quickly, don't ask unnecessary questions, and won't waste time. The two of them followed the security guard to the parking lot, and the means of transportation was still the ancient black Volga. In no time, the car drove into a stone forest. Jiang Xueming looked out of the car window curiously, and the buildings next to the station were getting farther and farther away. The lane looks very new because of the shadows of trees in the stone forest, and the uneven heating can be seen on the asphalt pavement, leaving deep and shallow marks. The trees along the road have completely petrified, and it is unknown how old this forest land is. The car was silent, only the road noise of rubber tires running over sand and gravel could be heard. This has suffocated Ah Xing. He dares not ask anything and knows nothing. I only know that Amin and this security brother talk very little and don't like the way they chat. Xueming took out his notebook and wanted to know some basic information about the destination. Sir, can you tell me the basic information about SW? I will keep a record of the hotels we will be staying in, as well as the attractions. When Jiang Xueming pulled out his pen, there was a crisp click, like a Walkman tapping the play button. The rain outside the window, accompanied by the low voice of the security personnel, reached the ears of two young men. SW is a code name that generally refers to the first characteristic of a temporary residence. When you get off the car, you should smell that the air here has a sweet and fishy smell. It's not very pungent. Xueming lowered his head to take notes. Meteor, on the other hand, imitates and opens the notebook on the phone to start rubbing the glass. The security personnel continued. Its original meaning is sweet wind. You communicate in Chinese, so let's call it sweet wind for now. 4 years ago, an exploration team discovered this place, and geological instruments showed a huge reserve of water sources. We decided to build a new station here. But surprisingly, a small settlement seemed to have emerged from the ground and appeared around the engineering team out of thin air. It only takes half an hour by car from the station to the southeast direction, and the journey is about 40 kilometers. Axing asked curiously, a settlement. What does it mean? It means human settlement, the security personnel replied. When our engineering team came to this rocky forest for reclamation and conducted on-dot site measurements. The rocky forest mountain area that was empty last month, suddenly a human settlement appeared. We originally thought that these humans might be descendants of the vanguard team at the station. In the pioneering history of the station, many teams of over 100 people inexplicably disappeared in the underground world. Perhaps they didn't die, they just took root and lived in this place. The people living in this settlement are their descendants. Xue Ming followed suit and asked, is there any trace of this sudden appearance that can be traced? It is precisely because there are no clues that the investigation has been ongoing for so many years, the security personnel replied. These human behavior habits that appear out of thin air are very strange. They are disconnected from modern society. Before you, other passengers observed that this settlement only has over 200 people. Without tap water and electricity, survival relies on some fish in underground water sources, as well as moss mushrooms and some plants that can grow in low-light environments. There are no livestock or pets. No need for fire or light, eat raw food. Without writing, most people can speak, and the languages are also very complex, ranging from Latin languages to dialects in Asian cultural circles. Strangely, the residents of this settlement are able to communicate fluently in different languages. Later, our research station believed that the speculation of the original descendants of the vanguard team should be wrong. Apart from language, this settlement has no traces of human civilization, and even no symbols or symbols of general historical records can be found. It's like a person speaking English without knowing Elizabeth and Victoria. It's like a person who speaks Chinese but doesn't know who Qin Shi Huang or Confucius was, and doesn't know where Chinese comes from. These residents' diving and hunting skills are superb, and their swimming ability is almost stronger than any professional athlete in the surface world. During the 4 years of station construction, although the engineering team did not have any accidents, many inexplicable things happened. It's like a brother who was chatting with you yesterday about his life ideals and wanted to work hard to support his family. Today, he suddenly left a resignation letter and disappeared into the underground world. For example, after a long conversation in the team, a young couple who were originally planning to get married suddenly broke up. In just a few hours, they changed their love and went to live in another block, or directly returned to the ground to live a normal life. These abnormal phenomena have caused inexplicable panic among the staff of the research station. Regarding this settlement, there seems to be an unknown spiritual energy at work, which can make the people around us unrecognizable. And we still can't figure out how they got here. Why do they live here? Why do they use our language and resemble us so much, yet behave like another kind of creature? That's all I know about the Fangfeng settlement, and that's what the boss wants me to tell you. Xueming asked, what is the scope of our investigation? Anything is fine, don't miss any suspicious places, the security personnel instructed, but I still want to remind you not to treat these creatures as humans. They look very similar to humans and are easy to confuse when together, but after spending time together, you will definitely feel the abnormalities in these creatures. Axing nervously asked, how do you say this? The security personnel turned around and glanced at Ah Xing, still with that empty gaze, staring at him in a daze, making Ah Xing feel nervous. Drive well. Look at the road master. Ah Xing immediately reminded. I've seen these things before. The security guard turned to look at the road and continued driving. I was just imitating their gaze, didn't I feel very uncomfortable? Even the first time we met before, I saw you in the same way. I just hope you'll arrive at your destination later and don't make a fuss. Ha ha ha, Ah Xing chuckled and patted Xue Ming's shoulder. Take a look, Brother Ming. This master has a good sense of humor and his eyes can speak. If I were to imitate that gaze, I might not be able to learn it right. If what you're saying is true, how do I know? Did your gaze pretend? Jiang Xueming closed his notebook and said, is there a possibility that you're also an indigenous person from the Fangfeng settlement, just a bit clever and has infiltrated the human world? The security personnel explained, the people in Fangfeng settlement do not eat cooked food. Passengers once brought cooked food to the residents of these settlements. As long as it is cooked, they do not want anything, whether it is protein or starch. Eating it will also make them vomit. Through the gap in the car window, sweet and pungent air seeped in. The fossil forest outside the window, with rough bark patterns on the road, seems to be filled with ancient and mysterious legends. Jiang Xueming handed a bread. His eyes were cold as he spoke. So let's eat and see. As the security guard's face became increasingly uneasy, Ah Xing laughed and made a round. Why are you all so nervous, isn't it just bread? I'll come first. After speaking, Bu Yoxing tore open the packaging bag and took a big bite. The security personnel remained calm and took half of the bread from Ah Xing's hand, nibbling on it. Jiang Xueming felt relieved when he heard the two brothers making a gurgling sound while swallowing, and then sighed. Bu Yoxing asked curiously, Brother Ming, both the security guard and I are fine. Isn't that a good thing? Why are you sighing? Excluding these two incorrect answers, I have to go for a walk in the settlement for 2 more days myself. Xue Ming took a fierce bite of the bread, with a hint of resentment towards the lack of steel, and uttered a sentence that sounded extremely terrifying. It's a pity that I can't personally send you to the dissection table at the research station. End of this chapter. Chapter 10. Polarization Sextant. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 10 Polarization Sextant. Under the guidance of the security officer, the 3 of them quickly arrived at the outer road of Fangfeng settlement. In the cold and humid air, the inexplicably sweet taste became increasingly strong, which made Xueming feel uneasy. Although the security guard has repeatedly stated that the air here has been tested and has no special impact on the human body. However, Xueming was still very worried in his heart. The mental disorders among the members of the previous engineering team must be related to the residents or natural environment of this settlement. They got off the road near the settlement and needed to walk over 300 meters of forest to reach the supply station. Stepping on the damp gray muddy ground, the three of them maintained a tacit silence. It seemed that only the sound of rain was left in the world, and there was also the movement of shoes stepping deep and shallow in the mud. In the rain curtain, the low stone buildings in the distance gradually became clear. The first thing that caught Xueming's eye was the stone building with the landmark sign of Jiujie Station. Not far away, there were layers of stone pile fences. When they arrived at the rain shelter porch of the stone building, Xueming even took a few extra glances towards the direction of the settlement. He touched the navy blue phone in his inner pocket. Even though Xueming didn't want to fall for the favor of Meteor, he still accepted the phone. However, from a distance of several tens of meters, the buildings of the Fangfeng settlement were clearly visible. It was a strange structural house he had never seen before. These settlement residents seem to still be stuck in the Stone Age, and the materials of their houses are like clumps of mud, ash, and soil mixed with grass leaves, gradually built up. The whole house is like an inverted water droplet, narrow at the bottom and wide at the top. The top of the house is filled with unknown dark green plants, which look like algae, used for drainage and shelter from rain. The houses of these residents are built against the bare rocks of the low hills, and from the perspective of the rainproof shelter on the roof and the site selection, the waterproof performance of these houses is very poor. Once water accumulates on one side of the house, the mud and grass walls may collapse. In addition, Mr. Xueming also saw some people wandering in the village. He is not sure if the creatures that stumble in the rain are really humans. These people walked aimlessly on the muddy path of the settlement. My hands drooped weakly, without any intention of rushing towards a certain location. The rain soaked their bodies and covered them with coarse fabric that was difficult to identify the specific era. A few people simply sat and lay by the bare rock, their clothes not even included, and they simply used 2 pieces of cloth and a few tough knitted vines to interweave together, making them clothes. Security guy is right, the residents here have no traces of civilization except for their humanoid appearance. They may just be afraid of the cold, so they cover themselves with fabric. Xueming thought carefully, but felt that it was not quite right because these residents did not show any fear of the cold. He and Bulyoxing have been shivering all over since they arrived at the Fangfeng settlement, with a body temperature probably not exceeding 10 degrees. The security guy is fine, the tight-fitting suit, mall hanging board, and bulletproof vest on his body should be quite warm to wear. If we carefully consider the inference, I'm afraid the only reason these residents wear clothes is because they dislike the dirty rainwater and don't want their skin to be stained with mud and dust. When eating, there is a piece of fabric on their body that can wipe their hands. Xueming jotted down all these things in his notebook, then took out his phone and took a photo in the direction of the settlement. He seemed to feel that it was not enough, so he took out a pen and drew all the droplet-shaped houses in the settlement. The pillars of the stone fence also depicted and recorded, refusing to let any clues go. Xing was curious when he saw Brother Xueming standing on the porch for a long time, unwilling to move. He approached Xueming and saw Minga drawing, immediately questioning him. Minga. Do you still know how to draw? Xueming. I understand a little bit. Xing. Then you must be a great painter, right? Look at your sketch, how good it is. Did you lie to me before? Actually, you're not a seller of beef offal. You don't have a seriously ill sister either. Jiang Xueming didn't say a word, just looked at Xing with that cold gaze, who was playful and smiling. Hee. Xing immediately became more honest, but his face became worried again. A look of being wronged. Jiang Xueming put away his diary and pen and followed the security guard into the room. When he entered, He saw Ah Xing blowing his nose in front of the porch in a strange way. He was also curious about how this 1.9-meter tall child looked like a 13 or 14-year-old child. So he asked, "Axing, what's wrong with you? Minga, you would be so angry. You must not have lied to me." Axing frowned and pursed his mouth. "That means there really is an 18-year-old little sister who is still lying in the hospital bed, tormented by crazy butterflies and Vita's imprint." These words left Xue Ming with more concern. He tentatively asked, "Can you say that you didn't believe what I said before? How could I believe all the words of a stranger at once?" Axing's expression was very serious. "I'm not a victim of human trafficking, Minga." When Jiang Xueming heard these words, he felt an indescribable feeling in his heart. He then asked, "So why do you believe it now?" "Because I saw your expression while drawing." Axing threw his backpack onto the sofa in the room and explained to Jiang Xueming earnestly, "You're holding a pen like a doctor holding a surgical knife. I have had several accidents, the most serious of which was a skydiving accident. Thanks to a tree, I survived. But my spleen and half of my liver were stuck in the tree. When the surgery was almost over, I woke up and saw my chief surgeon. The doctor was wearing a mask, and I could only see his eyes." Jiang Xueming helped the security brother light a fire for the fireplace, but didn't pay much attention to Ah Xing's words. The doctor's gaze as he cleared the wood debris from the torn muscle and stitched the wound together. Axing chose to lean the elderly chair against him. "It's very similar to the look in your eyes when you just drew, as if there was a life in your hand." Jiang Xueming didn't speak, he was a bit at a loss. Originally, Xueming thought Ah Xing was just a simple and innocent wealthy guy, but he didn't expect his thoughts to be as bold and refined as his pink shirt. This meteor is completely different from the meteor on the previous train. The security officer pushed the dining car out and served a meal for the two passengers. He greeted with a smile and said, "Come on, two travelers. There's nothing to eat in this place, they're all canned goods." Security big brother, Jiang Xueming's attitude softened a bit. "How about you introduce yourself? We can't keep calling you security, can we?" Along the way, Xueming maintained a tense state of mind due to her concern for her younger sister. Unconsciously, she seemed to express hostility towards anyone. Finally, there was a place to settle down, and all the hard work on the way was relieved, and his anxiety was gradually dissipating. This gave him some peace of mind, at least his teammates now look very reliable. Self-introduction. Me. The security guy scratched his head, unsure of how to start, as if he had never done such a thing before. Ah Xing asked, "Have you never introduced yourself to other passengers before, security officer?" "To be honest, there isn't." The security guard took out the employee's ID card from his pocket and handed it to Bulyoxing. "Usually, we just show our identification documents directly. Why do we have so much to say to the passengers?" Bulyoxing glanced at his identification and handed it to Jiang Xueming. The security guard continued, "You also learned some things from the information I provided. The security work at the station started from a few years to more than a decade ago. I only guarded this station in Fangfeng settlement for 4 years, and I stayed in another place for 6 years before, which is relatively short. The environment of the underground world is very unique, and new anomalies may occur in a place every few months. So security personnel need to be on duty for a long time. The longer we stay in the same block, the more familiar we become with the local situation. Simply put, returning to the Fangfeng settlement now is like going home. There are several roads inside, and I am clear about which one leads to which one. If something new suddenly emerges or passengers come for sightseeing and investigation, our years of routine security inspections can minimize the risk factor." Jiang Xueming lowered his head to check his identification information. ID name. David Bum, gender. Male, age. 36 years old, job brief name. Jiujie Station employee, armed personnel, employee-specific information. Mr. David is a Scotsman. He is not good at words, but he is an understanding person. He is willing to imitate the communication style of passengers for communication, and describing this person as having no personality is perfect. There are densely packed small characters on the back of the document as notes and explanations. When Mr. David was 16 years old, he found clues to the station and also found its location through illegal websites. This ordinary person did not have extraordinary inspiration like other passengers, but after systematic training, his comprehensive combat ability and shooting skills were excellent, making him a light weapons expert. He successfully became an employee of the station, joined the task force, and helped the pioneering team at Jogja station overcome difficulties. As a reward, the station agreed to treat his mother who was in advanced cancer. At the age of 20.6, we arranged a security job for David Byrne, allowing him to retire to the second line and have ample vacation time to accompany his family. Until today, he still works as a safety officer at the SW station. Hello passenger, if you see this document, please treat your security officer kindly. Mr. David is not someone who enjoys chatting. David Bourne said dryly, many passengers and I only meet once, because after investigating one place, they will go to the next place and never come back. After all, repeated investigations cannot yield any useful clues, nor can they exchange for a panacea. Are you right? Ha ha ha, so I have never had the habit of self-introduction. Jiang Xueming reached out his hand and said, my name is Jiang Xueming. Bu Liuxing also reached out his hand and imitated, my name is Bu Liuxing. Mr. David was stunned for a moment. He looked at these two brothers with one hand each, one left and one right, and didn't know what to say, so he just held them together. Next, there was the sound of opening cans, the friction between iron spoons and aluminum foil, and the chatter of chewing. Jiang Xueming was not idle either. He was very concerned about this security officer and read his ID card over and over again. The next investigation work is likely to involve consulting this old man in many places. Apart from basic information and notes, there are other things on his ID card that he cares about. In this thick card, there is a delicate interlayer that can fall out with a light tap. There is also a secret card in this compartment. It uses braille and cannot be seen clearly in low-light environments. It is necessary to use strong light or touch the uneven handwriting on the card with your hand to understand what is written on it, as if it is a special treatment to prevent others from peeping. Tested by Davy Boom, verification date. November 18, 2022, Polarization Sextant Review Results, Inspiration. E. Spirit. B+, Combat Skill. A. Madness Index. E. Survival Will. C. Intracranial Contraband, Spiritual Disaster Concentration. 17%, Jiang Xueming immediately asked, I found this braille card in the middle of your ID card. Does it have any specific meaning? There is no record of this in the passenger log. Well, Xing interjected, I also have this thing, it's the passenger security card. I used to want to be a passenger. Mr. David felt a bit down. But the inspiration index didn't meet the standard. Show me your card, Jiang Xueming said to Bu Liuxing, why didn't you give me this kind of thing earlier? Axing changed back to his playful smile and handed over his card, saying, you didn't ask me for it either. Jiang Xueming picked it up and took a look. Tested by Bu Liuxing, verification date. July 4, 2024, Polarization Sextant Review Results, Inspiration. B. Spirit. A+, Combat Skill. B. Madness Index. B+, Survival Will. A+, Intracranial Contraband, Spiritual Disaster Concentration. 34%, Jiang Xueming couldn't understand the specific meanings represented by these words, but compared to Mr. David, who is a normal person, Xing's data is generally not very normal, especially in terms of madness index and spiritual disaster concentration. Jiang Xueming clearly remembers that these two indices are closely related to the thinking state of passengers. The madness index represents the ability to maintain rational thinking when disturbed by the external environment. The higher this index, the more susceptible the passenger is to external factors. At the same time, the madness index also serves as a reference value for distinguishing the level of risk in different regions. Regarding the concentration of intracranial contraband and spiritual distress, it represents the various unstable factors in the passenger's internal emotional logic. If this value is very high, it indicates that the passenger is an individual with extreme emotions and is prone to extreme thinking that is extremely shocking and angry. At the same time, the concentration of spiritual disasters is also used as a reference value to distinguish different underground biological hazards in different regions. What's wrong, Minga? Bulyoshing explained, are you worried about my mental state? This card says that the security check instrument is called a polarized sextant. Its accuracy is not very accurate, it is only used to verify passengers' inspiration. When we have time, we also need to go to a higher precision sextant institution for security checks. End of this chapter.